Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales. Chapter 56-45. The surging white mist suddenly gathered towards Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu could clearly feel the power of the sacred ice realm sweeping towards him. At the same time, the power of the sacred ice realm that he had absorbed earlier seemed to have received a response and surged as well. Although the power of the sacred ice domain in Jiang Shenwu's Sea of Consciousness was surging violently, it did not affect his Sea of Consciousness at all. Kang Xinmu calmed himself down and quietly absorbed the power of the sacred ice realm that existed in the white mist. The power of the sacred ice realm that was generated from the annihilation was huge. Although Kang Xinmu's absorption speed was very fast, the white mist that floated in the surrounding space was still very thick. This was a great opportunity for Kang Xinmu. Unfortunately, he was unable to use the power of the sacred ice realm at the moment. After leaving the sealed mystic realm, he had to think of a way to comprehend the power of the supreme sacred ice. He could only use the power of the sacred ice realm after mastering the power of the supreme sacred ice. Within the annihilation realm, the three powers collided continuously. Every time they collided, the surrounding space would be torn apart, causing the surrounding void storm to become stronger and stronger. After the 10th collision, the power of the void storm had reached a terrifying level. The power produced by Ao Feng's supreme divine power's self-destruction was also maximized. The three powers collided for the last time. At the moment of collision, all the cultivators in the annihilation realm could clearly feel the airflow in the space suddenly stop. The entire space seemed to have been left behind by time and fell into a strange silence. There was not a single sound, and no aura of any cultivators leaked out. There was not a single trace of aura flowing. Kang Xinmu, who was absorbing the power of the sacred ice realm, keenly sensed that the surrounding white mist had suddenly condensed. Before he could react to what was happening, he sensed that the extreme 10-directional devil seal had suddenly activated. This was the first time the extreme 10-directional devil seal had activated all 9 seals of its own accord. The demonic power that surged out did not attack the surrounding cultivators, nor did it block the floating power in the surrounding space. Instead, it surrounded Kang Xinmu tightly. Compared to the heavenly saint grade that had perished, the 10-directional devil seal that Kang Xinmu possessed was a genuine heavenly saint grade. With the protection of the extreme 10-directional devil seal, Kang Xinmu was not affected by the three powers. Correspondingly, under the influence of perish, the 7 devouring devil sealing art in Kang Xinmu's eyes automatically activated. With the help of the 7 devouring devil sealing art, Kang Xinmu could barely see the scene of the three forces colliding. Where the three forces intersected, a mysterious vortex door that looked like a black hole appeared. The vortex gate was only the size of an adult's fist. It was this seemingly small vortex door that had absorbed all of Third Ant's powerful power and neutralized the collision of the three forces. If Kang Xinmu did not have the 7 devouring devil sealing art seal, he would have thought that the stillness of the scene was because the three forces had reached the same level and neutralized each other. However, it was different now. Kang Xinmu had the 7 devouring devil sealing art seal, so he saw what had happened just now. Although the mysterious vortex door had only flashed for a moment, Kang Xinmu was sure that he had not seen it wrongly. When he was still in the transcendent God realm, he had kept following the cultivation pace of the cultivators in the supreme God realm in order to reach the supreme God realm. Only when one reached the supreme level and comprehended the supreme God power would they be able to become a supreme level cultivator. While cultivating the supreme God power, they would also comprehend the supreme God power domain. Above the supreme God realm were the rules that Kang Xinmu had never encountered before. Now, Kang Xinmu saw the mysterious black vortex door again. What kind of existence was that black vortex door? How could it easily absorb the three powerful forces at the same time? With Kang Xinmu's current knowledge, he could not guess its existence. He could only vaguely feel that the path of cultivation was a long and boring one that he could not reach the end of. Under the protection of the extreme 10-directional devil seal, the collision of the three forces did not affect Kang Xinmu at all. The only regret was that the white fog had disappeared along with it. After calculating it, he had only absorbed about 1% of the Holy Ice Realm's power. As for the other cultivators, whether it was their movements or the power in their bodies, they were all forced to stop. Fortunately, this strange scene only lasted for 3 breaths of time before collapsing. All the cultivators once again felt the flow of energy in the space. The moment they came back to their senses, all the cultivators sighed at the power of the three forces. Especially the power of Ao Feng's self-destruction. The counterattack of a cultivator before his death was actually so powerful that it was enough to resist the power of the void storm. It was because the three forces were equally powerful that when they collided with each other, the power of the three forces would cancel each other out. The effect of the power cancelling each other out was also known as the other side of spacetime. It meant the forgotten spacetime. It could be understood that when the three forces collided, spacetime was distorted, and the power was lost to the other side of spacetime. When it collided on the other side of spacetime, it would not affect the current spacetime. However, the power that distorted spacetime was very strong. When the other side of spacetime was opened, it would affect the current spacetime. This was the still state that suddenly appeared. Among all the cultivators present, only a few could sense the state of the other side of spacetime. Although Kang Xinmu did not know the state of the other side of spacetime, he used the 7 devouring demon sealing art to see the scene just now. That black vortex door was the state of the other side of spacetime. After the three forces collided, the space formed by the death destruction was destroyed. Everyone returned to the desolate ancient city. At this time, on the city wall closest to the palace, stood a young man. The young man was the one that Kang Xinmu and the others had met not long ago. He had a passerby face and was unrecognizable. He was condensing some kind of seal with his hand. As if he had found something, he quickly withdrew his hand and disappeared. Right at the instant his figure vanished, Gu Tianzi flashed over. His face was solemn. He looked around for a moment, but did not find the target. Then he left while cursing, "Damn it, I was fooled by that boy Qing Fu again." The destruction of the death destruction also meant that the patrol teams in the desolate ancient city and the residents in the city had all disappeared. Inside the desolate ancient city, only the cultivators who came to search for the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art were left. Kang Xinmu's eyes fell on the ruins of the death destruction. It seemed that there was something that looked like a key left. Just when he was about to take it, he saw that the thing disappeared into thin air. Kang Xinmu roughly judged that the person was Tang Xiaoyu by the degree of the distortion of the space. Sure enough, Tang Xiaoyu soon showed his figure. "Brother Jiang, this is a high-level imitation of the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. It condenses the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. You can use it to find the real fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the desolate ancient city." Before Tang Xiaoyu finished his words, the thing in his hand suddenly flew into the air. Now all the cultivators saw the token of finding the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. One by one, they began to grab it crazily. Chapter 56-46. Brother Jiang, this was an accident. Wait for me to get it back. Tang Xiaoyu's body moved and suddenly disappeared. Kang Xinmu's reaction was even faster. He grabbed Tang Xiaoyu's collar and pulled him out of the 10,000 origin superposition technique. Let them fight. Kang Xinmu glanced at the token floating in the air. General Leng Changhong spent a lot of effort to refine the fallen annihilation, which was comparable to a heaven and earth saint treasure, just to destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Now that the fallen annihilation was destroyed, the 7 devouring demon sealing art seemed to have lost its threat, but in reality, it was still facing hidden dangers. Or rather, it was Kang Shinmu himself who was facing unknown dangers. The fallen annihilation existed to destroy the 7 devouring demons sealing art. The space created by the fallen annihilation only contained fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art's power. But the fallen annihilation was still activated, and the location where the core of the fallen annihilation descended was clearly towards Kang Shinmu. In other words, from the moment Kang Shinmu entered the ancient desolate city, General Leng Changhong had his eyes on him. Out of all the cultivators who came to the secret sealed realm, only Kang Shinmu had the 7 devouring demon sealing art's core engraving. General Leng Changhong's intention was clear. He wanted to use the fallen annihilation to destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art's core engraving, and then use this power to destroy the entire ancient desolate city. At that time, whether it was the 7 devouring demon sealing art's core engraving, or the 7 devouring demon sealing art's fragments in the ancient desolate city, they would all be destroyed. If Ao Feng didn't risk his life to kill Kang Shinmu, which led to the Void Storm's power, General Leng Changhong's plan would have developed smoothly. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. The token that could summon the 7 devouring demon sealing art's fragment floating in the air was also controlled by General Leng Changhong. He still existed. Whether he was a living person, a puppet, or some other form. Leng Changhong still existed in the ancient city. Kang Shinmu had a premonition that Leng Changhong was in the direction he sensed, secretly observing everything. Kang Shinmu. Just as Jiang Shenwu was pondering all of this, a clear and cold voice sounded out by his ear. Only then did he remember that he had been too preoccupied with thinking about the problem just now and had not looked for Moya in time. Just as Jiang Shenwu thought, Moya was a little angry that he didn't look for her immediately after he got out of danger. Moya's pretty face had a rare look of anger. There was also a hint of reproach in her gentle and beautiful eyes. "Senior," Mo said. For a moment, Jiang Shenwu didn't know how to explain to Moya, so he said this. Mo said. Kang, her beautiful eyes sized up Jiang Shenwu. Seeing that Jiang Shenwu wasn't injured, her worried heart finally relaxed. "You're not allowed to make decisions on your own in the future, do you understand?" Although Moya's words were gentle, the reproach in her tone made Jiang Shenwu feel guilty. Kang Shinmu nodded. He didn't say anything. Tang Xiaoyu had an inexplicable respect for Moya. He didn't dare to say anything when Moya opened her mouth. He stood obediently at the side and looked at the key. When the key was floating, it didn't have any luster. At this moment, the key lit up with a dark red halo and pointed in a direction. "Brother Jiang, Senior, I heard from that crazy woman that it can find the whereabouts of the 7 devouring demon sealing art." Tang Xiaoyu suddenly recalled what he had heard from Gufeng. Seeing Kang Shinmu was still silent, Tang Xiaoyu added, "She's annoying, but she's the daughter of the Everlasting Pavilion's master. Her words are trustworthy." Kang Shinmu was familiar with the Everlasting Pavilion. Gufeng had the magic weapon Bloodstain. She had soaked in the Scarlet Flame Qilint's bloodline power. Kang Shinmu had fought with her not long ago. He knew how strong she was. According to Tang Xiaoyu, Everlasting Pavilion's people were not only Gufeng, there were others. The 7 devouring demon sealing art that General Leng Changhong wanted to destroy at all costs, had such a strong attraction at this time. Kang Shinmu glanced at the key floating in the air. He chose to wait and see. In this situation, fighting for the key was undoubtedly the first bird to stand out. Kang Shinmu never did things like paving the way for others. However, Kang Shinmu didn't want to cause trouble, but someone took the initiative to provoke him. The key floating in the air flashed with a dark red halo. It gradually condensed together and formed a directional symbol. The direction was exactly where Kang Shinmu was. For a moment, all the cultivators' attention was focused on Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu, who was preparing to leave, sensed the abnormality and his body stiffened. Tang Xiaoyu's expression was also very serious. He stood at the side, ready to attack at any time. "Brother Jiang, this is what I wanted to say." Kang Xinmu pursed his lips and kept quiet. From the looks of it, he was being watched by Leng Changhong. Not only that, the key floating in the air clearly told the other cultivators that Kang Xinmu had the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The only fortunate thing was that no one knew whether Kang Xinmu had the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art from the ancient desolate city or some other fragment. The atmosphere became heavy because of the key token. However, very quickly, a warning voice broke the deadlock. "Tang Xiaoyu, I'm warning you. I was the one who wanted the extreme 10 devil seal first. You better not interfere. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble." Gu Feng's figure swept over from the side. Bloodstain followed closely behind. Bloodstain was thrown from the key token with a swift and fierce force. The key token was knocked to the ground, and the directional symbol on it was slightly off. "Crazy woman, I came with a mission this time. I'm not going to mess with you." Tang Xiaoyu's eyes quickly swept across the key token on the ground. He suddenly changed his direction and swept towards a palace. That palace was the direction where Kang Xinmu could vaguely sense the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Ever since he entered the ancient desolate city, he could feel the connection between the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Tang Xiaoyu's action also pointed out a path for most of the cultivators, and they all followed Tang Xiaoyu's footsteps. All the cultivators who came to the ancient desolate city wanted to obtain the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. No one wanted to fall behind others. Although the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art is not a precious treasure, you still want to get a share of it with your ability? Why don't you leave as soon as possible? Losing face is a small matter, but losing the face of Heaven Yuan Palace is a big problem. Gu Feng did not show any mercy to Tang Xiaoyu. She smiled mockingly and went straight to Kang Xinmu. Compared to the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, she was more concerned about the extreme 10 devil seal. Chapter 56-47. Tang Xiaoyu, you're dead. Gu Feng scanned the surroundings with her sharp eyes. She couldn't find Kang Xinmu, let alone Kang Xinmu's aura. Her eyes turned cold. Although Tang Xiaoyu had used the manifestation origin stacking technique to travel, he had intentionally slowed down. Gu Feng caught his aura easily and caught up with him quickly. "Tang Xiaoyu, you're courting death." Gu Feng had already set her eyes on the supreme 10 devil seal. She was indirectly telling the cultivators that the supreme 10 devil seal was in her possession. Everyone knew that the Wuji Pavilion was the overlord of the Outland, so they all took a step back. Only Tang Xiaoyu kept getting involved. He was undoubtedly challenging Gu Feng's bottom line. It was also equivalent to challenging the authority of the Wuji Pavilion. Cultivators like Tang Xiaoyu who were courting death were not rare. Hence, the crowd didn't pay much attention to Tang Xiaoyu. Instead, they set their sights on the palace that Tang Xiaoyu was heading towards. The token to find the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was also pointing in that direction. In that case, the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art that existed in the ancient wilderness ancient city must be in that palace. The cultivators headed towards it. At that moment, Kang Xinmu and Emoya had already entered the palace. The interior of the palace was no different from an ordinary palace. The interior was very compact. The switch of the secret room in the palace was also turned on the moment the two of them entered. This scene was within Kang Xinmu's expectations. Since entering the ancient wilderness ancient city, his every move had been calculated by Leng Zhanghong. Without any hesitation, he led Emoya into the secret room carefully. Outside the door, there were continuous sounds of fighting. Tang Xiaoyu's speechless screams could be heard. That Tang Xiaoyu is quite loyal. Kang Xinmu stopped in his tracks and glanced in the direction of the door with a smile. Moya replied gently. Tang Xiaoyu seemed careless, but he was quite meticulous in his work. He must have long since discovered that the 7 devouring devil sealing arts key token was pointing at Kang Xinmu, so he deliberately guided Kang Xinmu's position and used himself to attract the attention of all the cultivators. From this, Kang Xinmu was able to determine that Tang Xiaoyu's goal in approaching him wasn't the 7 devouring devil sealing art fragment. Perhaps they had other motives, but that was a story for another time. At the very least, he was standing on her side at this moment. He was someone she could trust. There were a total of 3 palaces in this courtyard. Tang Xiaoyu didn't come to this palace for a long time because he wanted to delay the others. Kang Xinmu and Moya did not waste any time and entered the secret chamber. The entire chamber was protected by a huge array formation. Moya used a technique to reveal the formation. As far as the formation in front of him was concerned, it encompassed the entire secret chamber. Kang Xinmu, this is a derivative formation. Be careful. Moya gently reminded. Although the trapping formation couldn't affect them, the troublesome part about trapping formations was that they had no boundaries. Ordinary formations would have a fixed boundary. In layman's terms, the formations inscribed by rune masters were all enclosed. No matter what kind of formation it was, the boundaries of the formation had to be sealed before the formation could be activated successfully. Otherwise, the formation would be disturbed by external forces during the activation process and affect the formation base. Then, after the formation was activated, the formation would undergo changes due to uncertain factors. If it was light, the formation would be destroyed. If it was heavy, the caster would be affected. Regardless of the outcome, it would affect the rune master's mind and soul. It was a fatal hidden danger for a rune master. Of course, there were countless cultivators in the universe, and the cultivation methods were even more numerous. The boundaries of the formations passed down by rune masters were all sealed. However, there were some rune masters who broke the convention. The boundaries of the formations they inscribed would not be sealed. Instead, they would deliberately stretch out a portion of the boundaries to derive other effects when the formation was activated. This type of formation had extremely stringent requirements for the rune master's mind and soul. When inscribing a formation, one had to pay attention to the layout of the formation base. One also had to calculate the effects of the formation base on the entire formation when the runes were activated. Most importantly, one had to pay attention to the power derived from the formation. All of these depended on the rune master's powerful mind and soul to deduce. This type of formation was commonly known as a derivation formation. The formation in this secret room was a derivation formation. Moya made the derivation formation in the secret room appear. However, she found that the boundaries were not sealed. Instead, they extended out. Based on what he could sense so far, the range of this derivation formation covered at least this courtyard. The derivation formation didn't activate even when Kang Xinmu and Moya entered the secret room. There were many scrolls in the secret room. Some of them were cultivation methods, while most of them were methods to refine puppets. There were also some scrolls that recorded the problems encountered when refining puppets. Leng Zhanghong must have refined puppets in this secret room. On the whole, this secret room seemed to be a place for cultivators to cultivate. There was nothing special about it. If there was anything special, it would be the item placed on the table in the middle of the secret room. It was a broken black object that looked like a thunderbolt. The derivation formation under his feet was still lit. The patterns around the table were slightly different from the patterns in the other parts of the secret room. If Kang Xinmu hadn't seen the item on the table, he would have almost ignored it. When he approached the table, the connection between Kang Xinmu and the broken 7 devouring demon sealing art suddenly became very strong. In particular, the core inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art suddenly activated at this moment. The moment the engraving was activated, a faint halo suddenly lit up around the broken object on the table. In less than a breath's time, the broken object on the table shed its black color and revealed its original appearance. It was a jade slip that was covered in dark red patterns. The jade slip was inscribed with densely packed runes. The runes seemed to have formed a connection with the core inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. One by one, they flew out of the jade slip. What was strange was that these runes seemed to be under some kind of confinement, as they surrounded the table. Kang Xinmu looked down at the array patterns around the table and guessed that this array was a confinement formation. Its purpose was to confine the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. This was probably the reason why Kang Xinmu couldn't accurately sense the location of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. He could only vaguely sense a direction. Even if there was a confinement formation around the table, the runes on the jade slip continued to fly out. This process lasted for the time it took for a joss stick to burn. During this time, the runes on the jade slip flew out continuously and gathered in this small space. Moya stood on the side and watched as the runes flew out of the jade slip and surrounded Kang Xinmu's figure. Kang Xinmu, are you okay? Moya's voice was soft and slightly worried. Chapter 56-48. Senior, I'm fine. Kang Xinmu was more concerned about Senior Moya's safety. In the end, the words were too dense and blocked Moya's view. He could not see her figure. Fortunately, there were only the two of them in the secret chamber, and there was also a derivation formation that had not been activated. Soon, the light on the jade scroll dimmed, and no more words flew out from it. Crack! A soft sound was heard, and the jade scroll on the table suddenly shattered. The shattered jade scroll fell to the ground. Kang Xinmu bent down and was about to pick up the jade scroll fragments on the ground when he realized that the jade scroll fragments disappeared the moment they touched the ground. Everything happened so quickly that Kang Xinmu could not react in time. Kang Xinmu's eyes narrowed. This jade scroll was not a fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, but a medium that stored the fragment. Now that the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art had flown out, the medium that stored the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art had naturally lost its function. The dark red words gathered in this space were the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. The moment the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment was released, the imprisonment formation that surrounded the table suddenly opened. Kang Xinmu could clearly feel the two forces colliding. Finally, the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment broke through the imprisonment formation and flew out of this small space. Therefore, the entire secret chamber was filled with the words on the jade scroll. The writing style of these words was the same as what Kang Xinmu had learned from the core seal of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. He could not fully understand the meaning of these words for the time being, but he had memorized all of them by relying on his outstanding memory. The words that flew out from the dark red jade scroll danced in the secret chamber. The entire secret chamber seemed to be filled with a layer of blood qi, dark red and strange. The derivation formation in the secret chamber was also covered in a layer of blood red that extended all the way to the outside as it lit up. Outside the palace. There were a total of 3 palaces in this courtyard. Kang Xinmu's palace was on the leftmost side. From the outside, there was not much difference between the 3 palaces, and there was nothing special about them. The cultivator who wanted to find the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art would have to search through the 3 palaces one by one to find the correct one. The cultivators who came here were all here for the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Naturally, each of them had their own means. Many cultivators immediately locked onto Kang Xinmu's palace. However, they were bewitched by Tang Xiaoyu and hesitated. Tang Xiaoyu, you think you can get the 7 devouring devil sealing art fragment? Every time Tang Xiaoyu used the 10,000 overlapping elements technique, Gu Feng could always find it immediately. Gu Feng's identity as a member of the Wuji Pavilion was no longer a secret. Some people were not in a hurry to enter the palace because they were waiting for Gu Feng's decision. After all, no one could say for sure what was inside the palace. Or perhaps, these three palaces were like the city lord's mansion just now, and were also magic tools. Just now, they were lucky enough to encounter the other side of time and space. This time, they might not be so lucky. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. The cultivators who came here all stood aside and watched quietly. Crazy woman, is there something wrong with you? The 7 devouring demon sealing art doesn't belong to your family. Why are you always stopping me? Tang Xiaoyu was so angry that he laughed. Hand over the things you stole and the 10-directional devil extreme seal. Naturally, I won't stop you. You can go and seek death however you want. Gu Fengyu swung her hand and the bloody scar once again wrapped around Tang Xiaoyu. I didn't steal anything. I'm tired of saying this. Tang Xiaoyu broke free from the blood scar's control again. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed toward the palace where Kong Xinmu was. Seeing this, Gu Feng did not hide her sarcasm. I told you that you can't find the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. You didn't believe me. Isn't it here? Tang Xiaoyu paused and pretended to be confused. Humph, Gu Feng sneered and glanced at the palace in the middle. This glance decided the other cultivators' choice. After weighing the pros and cons, some cultivators chose to believe Gu Feng and entered the palace in the middle. At this time, Kong Xinmu indirectly activated the derivation formation, and the palace in the middle directly exploded. In the instant that the array formation lit up, the entire palace was reduced to dust. None of the cultivators who entered were spared. This sudden change deeply told others that they had to be careful. This bunch of idiots triggered the palace's defensive formation. Gu Feng glanced at the powder on the ground in disdain and flung the blood scar again. Buzz buzz buzz. Just as Gu Feng was about to step forward, a buzzing sound suddenly sounded. Then, a jade slip appeared in front of Gu Feng. Gu Feng seemed to have received some kind of message and turned to leave. Before she left, she did not forget to leave a harsh sentence. Tang Xiaoyu, just you wait. If you had the ability, you would have caught me long ago. It's too cheap to say such harsh words. Tang Xiaoyu clicked his tongue. He stayed in place for a moment and suddenly glanced at the formation that lit up on the ground. His expression froze. Oh no! Tang Xiaoyu slapped his forehead and rushed into the palace in front of him, ignoring the cultivators who were staring at him covetously. When the remaining cultivators saw Tang Xiaoyu's action, they hesitated slightly. Seeing that the palace did not explode, they also tried to enter. In the palace's secret chamber, Kong Xinmu had already absorbed the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. He originally thought that all the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art were broken jade slips or broken scrolls. However, the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art here were large paragraphs of text. After Kong Xinmu absorbed these words, he could clearly feel that the dragon bloodline had been strengthened. His calm soul and sea of consciousness were dyed with a layer of blood. The imprint left by the 7 devouring demon sealing art in his eyes was more complete. There were only fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the secret chamber. There was no rule power. The 7 devouring demon sealing art imprint without the devouring rule power only strengthened the imprint and did not increase the realm. After Kong Xinmu absorbed all the words, the secret chamber returned to normal. However, the derivation formation had already been activated. A huge energy fluctuation came from it, reminding Kong Xinmu, Moya, and even Tang Xiaoyu who came in later that this derivation formation was not a simple trapping formation. Instead, it was a formation that would attack the cultivators who entered at any time. As for why the derivation formation did not activate as soon as the cultivators entered, only Ling Changhong would know the answer to this question. Senior Amoya, let's go. Kang Xinmu did not have time to think too much. He turned around and left with Senior Amoya. Before they could run a few steps, they were blocked by a pillar that suddenly appeared. Chapter 56-49. As more and more stone pillars appeared, the entire palace completely collapsed. The entire courtyard was filled with stone pillars that had emerged from the formation. The appearance of the stone pillars was illogical, as if they had been randomly generated. Kang Xinmu threw a punch, but it did not leave any mark on the pillar. On the other hand, he could feel the terrifying power from the stone pillar. If he was not careful, he would be forced to retreat by that power. Moya came over and gently placed her jade-like hand on Kang Xinmu's back, dispelling the power of the stone pillar's backlash. This is the ancient martial country's battle formation. When the ancient martial country used this formation to fight against other countries, they had never lost. Moya paused for a moment. The 10,000 Gu kingdom was the only accident, but because of this accident, the ancient martial country was destroyed. In that case, the 10,000 Gu kingdom is also quite strong, Kang Xinmu said. I guess the ancient martial country was flourishing, and the 10,000 Gu kingdom was just a country that was established not long ago, Moya said gently. Senior, where did you learn all this? Kang Xinmu was even more impressed by Senior Moya. There were many ancient books in the secret chamber just now. I casually flipped through them and learned about it from them. Moya smiled gently. Kang Xinmu suddenly understood. Just now, his attention had been on the jade scroll on the table, and he indeed did not pay attention to anything else. Senior Moya, did you find any useful cultivation techniques? Kang Xinmu thought for a moment and asked. Yes, the ancient books recorded the ancient martial arts cultivation methods of the ancient martial country, as well as the 10,000 Gu kingdom's Gu worm refining methods. Moya smiled faintly. Seeing the very ancient dimensional bag that Moya handed over, Kang Xinmu was a little puzzled. It's all inside, Moya said gently. Kang Xinmu took the dimensional bag and roughly looked through it. He only felt his scalp tingle. The number of scrolls in this dimensional bag was almost comparable to the Dragon God clan's treasure trove. Senior Moya must have brought out all the ancient books in the secret chamber, right? These are the ones I've filtered. You can choose the ones that are useful, Moya said. Kang Xinmu felt bitter in his heart. Since Senior Moya said that she had chosen the ancient books, then they must be useful. There was no need for her to choose them. Forget it, I'll take some time to read these books after I leave the mystic realm. Senior Moya, if we want to leave this battle formation, do we have to destroy these stone pillars? Kang Xinmu pondered for a moment and said. Theoretically, that's the case. However, there are too many of these stone pillars. We won't be able to destroy them in a short period of time. Moya's beautiful eyes landed on the place where the stone pillars had appeared. Along with the appearance of the stone pillar, the array pattern on the ground had already disappeared. It was even more difficult to find the foundation of the formation. But I have to say, these stone pillars are very hard. Kang Xinmu threw out another punch to test the waters. As a result, his fist was shaken to the point of pain. You tried it just now. If you want to destroy it with brute force, it might be a little difficult. Moya raised her eyes and glanced at the countless stone pillars in the surroundings. Yes. Kang Xinmu felt the backlash from the stone pillars. It was indeed very strong. Aya. Suddenly, a scream was heard from the side of the stone pillar. Following that, a person appeared in front of them. His speed was too fast, so his head hit the stone pillar. It looked extremely tragic. The person was Tang Xiaoyu. No one knew what he had encountered. His fiery red hair was now covered in cobwebs, and his entire body was covered in dirt. Brother Jiang, this formation is too strange. My movement skill actually failed. Tang Xiaoyu said as he held his head that was hurting from the hit. Upon hearing that, Kang Xinmu's expression froze. When the fallen destruction was activated previously, Tang Xiaoyu had used the manifestation origin stacking technique to bring Senior Moya out from the self-formed space. The fallen destruction was an existence comparable to a heaven and earth sacred grade, but it still could not stop the manifestation origin stacking technique. What was the origin of the ancient martial country's battle formation? How could it even interfere with the manifestation origin stacking technique? The positions of these stone pillars are too random. I've been hit so many times. Tang Xiaoyu could not believe it either. Every time he appeared, there would be a stone pillar, and he would hit it coincidentally every time. Kang Xinmu listened to Tang Xiaoyu's nagging and could not help but laugh. He also secretly sighed at the power of the battle formation. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of an obscure power swiftly attacking Tang Xiaoyu from behind. Get out of the way. Kang Xinmu grabbed Tang Xiaoyu's arm and swept him to the side. That obscure power came straight at them, striking the stone pillar beside the two of them just now. The moment the two collided, the stone pillar actually shook. Such a powerful force would definitely cause a huge commotion. However, there was only the faint sound of an aura fluctuation coming from the direction of the obscure force. There was no other movement. Brother Jiang, I'll leave first. Tang Xiaoyu glanced at the stone pillar and then at the direction of the aura. He hurriedly said and was about to leave. Where are you retreating to? Kang Xinmu was very puzzled. The battle formation here had already been activated. It was easy to enter, but it would probably be very difficult to leave. Someone wants to catch me. I have to escape first. As soon as Tang Xiaoyu finished speaking, his figure disappeared on the spot. A moment ago, he had excitedly used the manifestation origin superimposition technique. The next moment, he appeared, his entire body collided with the stone pillar behind Kang Xinmu. This collision was not light and the clang was very loud. My handsome face. Tang Xiaoyu covered his face and wailed. Kang Xinmu glanced at Tang Xiaoyu and shook his head helplessly. Even Moya could not help but cover her mouth and chuckle. Tang Xiaoyu, admit to your crimes obediently, and we'll bring you out of here. Not far away, a loud voice sounded. This voice seemed to penetrate the battle formation and the formation formed by the stone pillars to reach Tang Xiaoyu. Kang Xinmu clearly sensed that his soul consciousness and sea of consciousness were rippling. The person who spoke had a very strong soul consciousness. In the face of such a strong soul consciousness, Tang Xiaoyu appeared very calm. He only covered his ears and kept muttering, "Eldest senior brother is really a brainless righteous person." He kept muttering, "Eldest senior brother is such a brainless righteous person. I've already said that I've never been to any holy land, yet you want me to confess. What should I confess?" The person who shouted outside was Tang Xiaoyu's eldest senior brother, Lian Yi. Lian Yi had only found this place after the battle formation had been activated, and Tang Xiaoyu had just entered the formation. Lian Yi used his soul consciousness to call out as he looked at the battle formation that had appeared in the courtyard. He understood Tang Xiaoyu's strength. Tang Xiaoyu might have the ability to enter, but he might not have the ability to come out. Tang Xiaoyu was very smart, and he would not seek death. Correspondingly, Tang Xiaoyu also understood Lian Yi's character. If he did not respond, Lian Yi would not continue to stay. Tang Xiaoyu also heaved a sigh of relief when Lian Yi left. Chapter 5650. Tang Xiaoyu took a deep breath, stood up and stretched his body. For a split second, Kang Xinmu felt a strange, yet strong power from Tang Xiaoyu. Even though Tang Xiaoyu's face was still swollen and bruised, his entire temperament had changed. He was like a completely different person from his sickly appearance just now. "Brother Jiang, I don't care about that stuff. To be honest, I came to the hidden territory for something else." Tang Xiaoyu's words were not false. The art of 7 devouring demon sealing sounded powerful, but there were many negative rumors about it. Tang Xiaoyu was a person who loved to die, but was afraid of death. Anything related to darkness, he would not touch it if he could. "I know many of you came here for the fragment of the art of 7 devouring demon sealing. From my point of view, General Leng Changhong's method is a bit extreme, but perhaps there is a reason behind it. Some things, you have to act within your means." Tang Xiaoyu was giving Kong Xinmu a piece of advice. Yes. Kong Xinmu did not deny Tang Xiaoyu's statement, nor did he agree to anything. It was a very pertinent response. Mo Ye heard everything Tang Xiaoyu said, and also saw all of Tang Xiaoyu's actions. This person, Tang Xiaoyu, was perhaps a person that Jiang Shenwu would find hard to come by on his path of cultivation in the future. Tang Xiaoyu looked around at the stone pillars. He was also melancholy. "Brother Jiang, I did not think there would be a battle formation here. The information I sent was wrong, please forgive me. These stone pillars did not seem to be easy to deal with." "It's not your fault." Kong Xinmu was also thinking about the same thing. What kind of existence was the art of 7 devouring demon sealing, that General Leng Changhong would go to such lengths to destroy it? First, it was the destruction of a saint rank item, and now it was a battle formation. This was a battle formation that Kong Xinmu had never seen before. He could not find a pattern or a way to break through it. As Kong Xinmu was thinking, the art of 7 devouring demon sealing quietly activated in his eyes. Kong Xinmu's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly understood General Leng Changhong's concerns. The 7 devouring devil sealing art could control a person's mind. This was only a part of the 7 devouring devil sealing art, but it could actually control its own power. If he obtained the complete 7 devouring demon sealing art, it was highly likely that he would walk the same path as General Leng Changhong. Kong Xinmu suddenly wasn't sure if his method of searching for the fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing art was the right choice. Kong Xinmu was deep in thought when he glanced over and saw Tang Xiaoyu start tossing and turning again. Tang Xiaoyu focused his mind and devoted himself to using the manifestation origin stacking technique. After running into a wall 3 times in a row, Tang Xiaoyu seemed to have found the trick. The next time he landed, he would cleverly avoid the stone pillars. After many attempts, he was able to skillfully avoid the stone pillars and move freely in the forest of stone pillars. "I'm still as quick-witted as ever." Accompanied by Tang Xiaoyu's laughter, the forest of stone pillars began to change. The stone pillar forest was a method of the battle formation, but no one expected that the stone pillar forest would transform. Moreover, there was no pattern to the transformation. Even so, Tang Xiaoyu was still able to dodge freely in the forest of stone pillars that was changing. Looking at his posture, he had already mastered the movement technique of the manifestation origin stacking technique. At the very least, he had made some adaptations to the battle formation. Yes, adaptations. Kong Xinmu had an epiphany. The 7 devouring demon sealing art was a technique that leaned towards darkness, but the advancement of the technique was ultimately complementary to the heart of the cultivator. If the heart was towards light, it would not be tainted by darkness. Knowing how to adapt at any moment, even if it was darkness, it would also flow towards light. Moreover, in the boundless universe, there were countless cultivators. Wherever there were cultivators, there would be corresponding cultivation techniques. With such a large number of cultivation techniques, how could one differentiate between darkness and light? The definition of a cultivation technique was ultimately based on the heart of the cultivator. The so-called righteousness and evil were just the cultivator's own standpoint. Just like the relationship between Kang Shinmu and the demon god race. To Kang Shinmu, the demon god race was against him, so he defined the demon god race as the evil side. However, to the demon god race, Kang Shinmu had killed Ao Tong and Ao Feng, so they defined Kang Shinmu as the enemy. Both sides had different standpoints, so there was a fundamental difference in the definition of righteousness and evil. Even though there were many hidden dangers in cultivating the seven devouring demon sealing art, as long as one followed one's heart, the seven devouring demon sealing art would definitely be an excellent cultivation technique. At least for the current Kang Shinmu, he needed the power of the seven devouring demon sealing art. After the seven devouring demon sealing art's insignia merged with Kang Shinmu's eyes changed, and he could see the essence of the technique. Even his devouring power was strengthened, and he could easily devour domain power. The only thing that was lacking was that Kang Shinmu could not use his own will to activate the insignia of the seven devouring demon sealing art. Besides the fact that the seven devouring demon sealing art was too powerful, Kang Shinmu's current strength was limited. He needed to strengthen his understanding of the power of the soul. Looks like you've already made your choice. Moya stood quietly at the side, her beautiful eyes filled with Kang Shinmu's thoughts. Just now, she saw a faint layer of red aura flowing around Kang Shinmu's body. When Kang Shinmu opened his eyes, that red aura also concealed itself on his body. That red aura was the aura of the seven devouring demon sealing art. Senior Moya, I want to give it a try. Kang Shinmu said in a low voice. Junior believes that the nature of the seven devouring demon sealing art depends entirely on the will of the cultivator. The seven devouring demon sealing art was only a cultivation technique. How could its essence be so easily defined just because of the power it displayed? Yes, but you have to do what you can, Moya said gently. Moya's gentle voice made Kang Shinmu's wavering heart completely firm. In the battle formation, the transformation of the stone pillars gradually slowed down. However, it still maintained a speed that was neither fast nor slow, and maintained the transformation of the stone pillars. These stone pillars all looked the same. Just by looking at them with the naked eye, it was impossible to see any difference. Not to mention using the characteristics of the stone pillars to determine the next position. Kang Shinmu, pay attention to your surroundings. Moya said gently. Her slender jade-like hands gently formed a seal. Not long after, the surroundings were shrouded by a faint white holy light. Under the envelopment of Moya's white holy light, some words actually appeared on the stone pillars. Each stone pillar had a certain amount of words on it. The words were written in the common language of the ancient martial country. Kang Shinmu could only see the words, but he was unable to understand what they meant. After a quarter of an hour, the white holy light gradually dimmed. Chapter 56-51. Got it. Kang Shinmu nodded. Did you discover anything? Moya's tone was gentle, and her face was pale. I discovered that there are words on every stone pillar, and they are of different lengths. As Kang Shinmu spoke, he realized that Moya was looking at him strangely. Seeing that Moya's lily-white hands were forming seals again, Kang Shinmu hurriedly stopped her. Senior, please wait a moment. Moya was helpless. She did not know what Kang Shinmu was going to do. Kang Shinmu would not let Moya waste her energy, especially when they were trapped in the battle formation. No one could guess what would happen next, so he had to conserve his energy. Moya had given him many ancient books of the ancient martial kingdom, and Kang Shinmu felt that he would definitely be able to find a translation for them. After searching for a while, he found 2 scrolls. One of the older scrolls had words that were exactly the same as the words he had seen on the stone pillars. Although he did not know the language of the ancient martial kingdom, Kang Shinmu had a good memory. He could roughly remember it after reading it once. The other scroll had words written in the current era. Kang Xinmu made a rough comparison and roughly understood the situation of this battle formation. Moya felt a little helpless when she saw Kang Xinmu's actions. Leng Zhonghong was not a fool. Why would he translate the battle formation using the current era's language? Senior Moya, I know the breakthrough point of the battle formation. After comparing the two scrolls, Kang Xinmu passed the two scrolls to Moya. Look here and here. Moya looked at where Kang Xinmu was gesturing and indeed found the difference between the two scrolls. Moya knew a little about the language of the ancient martial kingdom. She took the two scrolls. The older scroll recorded the battle formation, including the strong country teams that had been defeated in the battle formation, and some extremely strong cultivators. The other scroll also recorded the battle formation. It could be considered a supplement to the battle formation. From the ancient martial kingdom until now, he had lived alone for thousands of years. Apart from searching for a way to destroy the seven devouring demon sealing art, he had also devoted himself to researching battle formations. The contents of the two scrolls were naturally different. What surprised Moya was that the place that Kang Xinmu had discovered was the location of the battle formation's base. This might be the breakthrough point to break the battle formation. While Moya was reading the scroll, Kang Xinmu was already observing the surrounding stone pillars. Without Senior Moya's holy light, the words on the stone pillar couldn't appear. Kang Xinmu gathered his soul consciousness and attempted to activate the seven devouring devil sealing art. After a few tries, the seven devouring devil sealing art was activated. Kang Xinmu was very clear that the seven devouring devil sealing art had not been activated because of his command, but because of some kind of call. No one can leave this place. An aged voice echoed in the space. Like a clap of thunder, it reverberated incessantly, one after another. Every time it was repeated, the stone pillar would tremble violently. The trembling stone pillar seemed to have received some kind of command and suddenly turned into several spears, rushing towards Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu used the Supreme Dragon martial technique that he had previously comprehended to repel the incoming spears. The spears were repelled and once again turned into stone pillars. However, very quickly, other stone pillars turned into spears and attacked, their numbers increasing. Not only that, the spears that were repelled, after turning back into stone pillars, quickly turned back into spears and attacked again. Even though Kang Xinmu had comprehended the Supreme Dragon martial technique, he couldn't withstand this kind of bombardment. Especially when these stone pillars turned into spears, their numbers would only increase as time passed. Currently, the conditions for the stone pillars to turn into spears were unknown. Kang Xinmu, pay attention to the stone pillars' attack trajectories. Moya's beautiful eyes focused as she said. Yes, Senior. Kang Xinmu answered straightforwardly. However, if he really had to observe the stone pillars' attack trajectories during the battle, it would be difficult for him to do so. Stop your futile struggle, none of you can escape. The aged voice resounded again. As if it was some kind of command, the stone pillars suddenly changed their positions. The ground immediately collapsed inch by inch and the entire forest of stone pillars in the battle formation was suddenly suspended in the air. The stone pillars didn't fall and correspondingly, Kang Xinmu didn't feel like he was falling either. However, he clearly saw that his feet were suspended in the air. Moya's feet were suspended in the air as well and her figure was still standing in the air. According to the records on the scroll, the two of us should be at the base of the battle formation. Moya's beautiful eyes swept across the surroundings of the stone pillars and said gently. Hearing Moya's words, Kang Xinmu understood. He suddenly turned around and took 4 steps forward, just in time to reach a stone pillar. This stone pillar also coincidentally turned into a spear and stabbed towards Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu conveniently grabbed this spear and used the Supreme Dragon martial skill to brutally destroy this spear. After the spear was destroyed, it no longer turned into a stone pillar and there was now an empty spot. At the original position of the stone pillar, runes gradually appeared from the air. From the looks of it, it should be the base of the battle formation. Senior Emoya, please wait a moment. Kang Xinmu relied on his own strength to find 4 stone pillars. The 4 seemingly simple stone pillars actually consumed a lot of Kang Xinmu's strength. Kang Xinmu, stop for a moment. Emoya didn't deny that Kang Xinmu's method was not bad, and he indeed found the 4 important points of the battle formation. However, the battle formation was very big and Kang Xinmu wanted to accurately find the battle formation's base. He would most likely use up all his strength. At that time, if General Leng Changhong appeared, he would be in danger. Senior, please be careful. Emoya only cared about looking at Kang Xinmu and completely did not notice behind her. Kang Xinmu didn't have time to say anything and shot to Emoya's side and brought her to the side. He saw hundreds of sharp arrows that were only an inch long pierced through the air and fixed on the stone pillar at the side. It was unknown what these hundreds of sharp arrows were, but they actually managed to destroy the stone pillar. The stone pillar didn't even last for a few breaths before it shattered. Taking advantage of the collapse of the stone pillar, Kang Xinmu inexplicably pulled out a sharp arrow. An icy cold feeling suddenly emerged from the sharp arrow and drilled into Kang Xinmu's meridians, heading straight for Kang Xinmu's soul consciousness. Kang Xinmu knew that his soul consciousness was very strong and he didn't dare to let this strange power barge in so recklessly. In the end, his soul consciousness couldn't stop this power and was directly swallowed by the devouring power. After the devouring power swallowed this power, Kang Xinmu clearly felt that the mark of the 7 devouring demon sealing art became more stable. Originally, he had just barely stepped into the first level, but after swallowing this power, he stabilized the first level. Chapter 56-52. Kang Xinmu looked at the remaining arrows. Unfortunately, Kang Xinmu only had time to grab 4 arrows. The remaining 4 arrows did not have the same power as before. It seemed that not every arrow had that kind of power. The 7 devouring demon sealing art should not exist. That weathered voice resounded again. These words also proved his identity in a disguised way. He was the city lord of the ancient desolate city, General Leng Changhong. Leng Changhongwu's words caused the other cultivators in the battle formation to be on their guard. The 7 devouring demon sealing art had appeared. All the cultivators used their own techniques to search for the 7 devouring demon sealing art. There was a strange person among these cultivators. His brown curly hair was messy as if he hadn't combed it for a long time. He wore a linen robe and held an 8 trigrams compass in his hand. He was mumbling something. No one knew what secret technique he used to summon the key token of the 7 devouring demon sealing art into the battle formation. The key token floated above the battle formation like a star, pointing out a direction for the cultivators. The guiding energy on the key token gathered on Kang Xinmu's side. Kang Xinmu's face darkened. However, Kang Xinmu felt that being pointed out by the key token was not a big deal. The real problem was that when the key token's guiding energy gathered on his body, the original blood red color gradually darkened and turned dark red. There were 2 eye-catching marks on his body. Since it was the key token of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, then all the signs on the key token were related to the 7 devouring demon sealing art. At this time, the key token's guiding energy turned dark red, and there were 2 marks on it. This meant that there were 2 7 devouring demon sealing art fragments in the world. For a moment, all the cultivators were excited. They headed straight for the direction the key token was pointing at. Kang Xinmu, let's get out of here first. Emoya glanced at the surroundings with her beautiful eyes. For the time being, there was no sign of a cultivator. The battle formation had been fully activated and the battlefield was huge. Those cultivators wouldn't be able to find them in a short time. There was also the possibility that some cultivators had used special methods to get here. As soon as Emoya finished speaking, the space in front of her suddenly distorted, and then a hand reached out from it. She couldn't care less about her usual image anymore. Her jade-like hand grabbed the hand in the air and flung it forcefully. A blood-curdling scream rang out as the man's body slammed into a stone pillar. "It's me, Tang Xiaoyu." Seeing that he was about to fall, Tang Xiaoyu hurriedly hugged the stone pillar. Moya relaxed when she saw that it was Tang Xiaoyu. "Tang Xiaoyu, didn't you go out? Why are you back?" Kang Xinmu was puzzled. Just now, Tang Xiaoyu had been continuously using the manifestation origin stacking technique. Calculating the time, even if he hadn't left the battle formation yet, he would be out soon. "I've found a way out. I've come back to take you out." As Tang Xiaoyu spoke, he realized that the stone pillar he was hugging was shaking violently. "Let go, quickly," Kang Xinmu hurriedly reminded him. Before Tang Xiaoyu could let go, he saw the stone pillar turn into a sharp spear. He hurriedly used the manifestation origin stacking technique to avoid the attack of the spear. Kang Xinmu was already very familiar with dealing with the spear transformed from the stone pillars. He directly used the Supreme Dragon Martial technique to destroy everything. "This is the breakthrough point of the battle formation that I found. Take a look." Tang Xiaoyu threw a jade slip to Kang Xinmu. "Aya, who sneaked up on me?" In the next moment, a sharp voice was heard. Immediately, a young man in a linen robe with curly hair appeared out of thin air. The jade slip that Tang Xiaoyu threw to Kang Xinmu was snatched away just like that. "Xiaofan, look, Gufeng." Tang Xiaoyu suddenly pointed behind the young man and exclaimed. However, the young man who was called Xiaofan was indifferent. Instead, he calmly accepted the jade slip. "Tang Xiaoyu, this thing is mine now that it's in my hands. Don't play tricks on me." Xiaofan glanced at Tang Xiaoyu mockingly. "However, your IQ is so low. Can the map you made be used?" Xiaofan casually glanced at the jade slip and could not help but frown. Indeed, the brains of people who like crazy women are so disgusting. Tang Xiaoyu casually threw a large pile of jade slips to Xiaofan. "Since you like taking other people's jade slips so much, these are all for you." After Tang Xiaoyu threw the jade slips, he turned around and flashed to the side. Before leaving, he even gave Kang Xinmu and Moya a look. Kang Xinmu and Moya understood what he meant. Xiaofan subconsciously caught the jade slips that Tang Xiaoyu threw over. Boom! In the next moment, all the jade slips exploded. The yellow smoke produced by the explosion quickly engulfed Xiaofan's figure. The pungent smell that emanated from it almost made Xiaofan die on the spot. "Tang Xiaoyu, you're dead." As Xiaofan spoke, he threw a compass at Tang Xiaoyu. Tang Xiaoyu was already prepared to destroy it. "Wait a moment." However, Kang Xinmu was one step ahead and caught the compass that Xiaofan threw over. He easily dissolved the spell that was about to explode on the compass. This is just an ordinary Dharma artifact. The really useful Dharma artifact is the compass that he is holding right now. It's called Devouring Star, and it seems to be able to summon something special. Tang Xiaoyu saw that Kang Xinmu was interested in Xiaofan's compass, so he explained. Kang Xinmu nodded and rushed over to Tang Xiaoyu's position with Moya. The three of them avoided the attacks of the stone pillars while looking for the array foundation, gradually distancing themselves from Xiaofan. That Xiaofan is also a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion, the disciple of the Great Elder. Logically speaking, he should be chasing after the crazy woman. "I don't know what's wrong with his brain, but he actually came here," Tang Xiaoyu muttered. "And that guy's brain is clearly full of Devouring Star and the crazy woman, but he didn't fall for it. That's really strange." Thinking about it carefully, this was the first time that Tang Xiaoyu failed to deceive Xiaofan. It would have been better if Tang Xiaoyu had not said this, but once he said it, even Kang Xinmu could not help but despise him. He was clearly the one who kept saying, "Crazy woman," but just now he said, "Gufeng." As long as there was a normal person, they should not fall for it. Tang Xiaoyu's IQ was indeed lacking, but he was still very reliable. He found another complete array foundation for the battle array. Moreover, what surprised Kang Xinmu was that his ability to comprehend the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique was extremely terrifying. In just half an hour, Tang Xiaoyu could use the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique to leave the battle array. Looking at Tang Xiaoyu's hand gesture, it should be 8 layers. What Jiang Shenwu understood was to fold the space 8 times, and then open up the connection between the battle formation and the outside space, thus escaping. The truth was similar to Kang Xinmu's speculation. Tang Xiaoyu was 8 layers. As for the soldiers, they did not seem to exist. Kang Xinmu quietly released the supreme power of the soul to check the surrounding situation. Mo Ya's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she sensed the changes in her surroundings. Tang Xiaoyu focused his mind and was still fiddling with the manifestation origin stacking technique. Actually, before he found the array foundation, Tang Xiaoyu had used the manifestation origin superposition technique to leave the battle array. But at that time, he was so excited that he returned and never went out again. Tang Xiaoyu was currently trying to restore his previous state. The three of them sensed a large group of cultivators approaching. Surprisingly, the surrounding space was still very quiet, and there was no movement of any aura. Kang Xinmu, you guys be careful. Mo Ya's slightly narrowed beautiful eyes suddenly opened. Her holy light sensed that there were no less than dozens of abnormally obscure auras around them, and they were rapidly approaching them. However, the strange thing was that she could only sense these auras with the holy light, but could not see them. The obscure aura detected by the holy light had already surrounded them. However, they were only surrounded by the stone pillars and the fog that lingered around them. "Senior, I know what those soldiers are referring to." Kang Xinmu withdrew the soul consciousness that he had released. "What is it?" Tang Xiaoyu cast a puzzled look at him when he heard this. Among the three of them, he was the one who understood battle arrays the best. In order to try out the manifestation origin stacking technique, he had almost run through the entire battle array. Apart from the cultivators who had barged into it, he had not seen any other existences. "Do you remember the patrolling troops we saw when we first entered the ancient desolate city?" Kang Xinmu said in a low voice. When he said this, Mo Ya and Tang Xiaoyu suddenly understood. Although those patrolling troops were also puppets, their hearts were alive. "Brother Jiang, that's not right. Those troops became sacrifices to activate the annihilation. Didn't they disappear with the annihilation?" Tang Xiaoyu was puzzled. In the blink of an eye, he seemed to have thought of something, and his pupils shrank. "Are they still alive?" Tang Xiaoyu found this unbelievable. Kang Xinmu nodded. The hearts of those troops were alive. Although they had become sacrifices for the annihilation, as long as their hearts still existed, they could be resurrected. This was a technique of Leng Zhanghong's battle array. As if to prove their guess, several figures holding sharp arrows suddenly rushed over from the side. Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu cooperated and repelled the figures that were rushing over. They were the patrolling troops of the ancient desolate city. After they were knocked down by Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu, they fell into the void below. Not long after, they reappeared. "Brother Jiang, do we need to destroy their hearts before we can break through the array?" Tang Xiaoyu's speed was very fast, and he caught another soldier. In the time it took for him to speak, he had already dug out the soldier's heart. Kang Xinmu had also thought of this question. However, he had a feeling that things were not so simple. If destroying the hearts could get rid of all the soldiers here, then these soldiers would have already been sacrificed. No matter how strong their hearts were, they would have been destroyed by the power of the Annihilation Void Storm and Ao Feng's self-destruction. However, this was not the case. These soldiers appeared again. Their hearts were still beating. During this time, Tang Xiaoyu destroyed one heart and sealed another at the same time. However, not long after, these two soldiers still stood up, and they could still take the initiative to attack others. This proved that destroying the soldiers' hearts was useless. Do we have to go and defeat that city lord? Tang Xiaoyu grinned, we don't even know where he is, how are we going to defeat him? While he was muttering, Tang Xiaoyu's hands did not slow down. However, the difficulty of dealing with the soldiers in the array exceeded Tang Xiaoyu's expectations, and for a while, they fell into a bitter battle. Kang Xinmu had been observing these soldiers. When they attacked, their hearts beat at the same rhythm. When they left the battlefield, the rhythm of their heartbeats would change, maintaining a rhythm that was neither fast nor slow. Just like the soldiers' heartbeats, the soldiers' attacks were also the same, but there was a difference in strength. Suddenly, Kang Xinmu discovered something strange. The soldiers who were attacking Tang Xiaoyu were beating at the same rhythm, and the soldiers who were attacking from behind were also beating at the same rhythm. The soldiers who were rushing over were mainly focused on Emoya. Kang Xinmu leaped over, and in a few moves, he knocked down a few soldiers who wanted to get close to Emoya. It didn't take long for even more soldiers to gather over. These soldiers' heartbeats were beating at the same rhythm. Until now, the soldiers who were attacking them were divided into 3 groups, and they should belong to 3 different troops. Chapter 56-54. Kang Xinmu could see the hearts of these soldiers. The hearts of the 3 teams surrounding them were all the same. It was obvious that the core that controlled them had yet to appear. Thus, it would be useless no matter how many soldiers they destroyed. To completely destroy these soldiers, they had to destroy them from the root, which was to find the core that controlled them. Senior, Brother Jiang, wait a moment. I'll see if I can send you out. No one knew what Tang Xiaoyu did, but a gray cover suddenly appeared around him, enveloping his entire body. At the same time, several air currents swept past his body from time to time. As the air currents flowed, the space around him distorted from time to time. The moment the space was opened, Kang Xinmu understood that this was the manifestation origin superposition technique. According to Senior Emoya, the manifestation origin superposition technique was a very unique spatial movement technique. Moreover, it was the only spatial movement technique. Logically speaking, using the manifestation origin superposition technique could completely understand the battle formation. But when it came to Tang Xiaoyu, it did not seem to be of much use. Kang Xinmu did not have much hope regarding this. He observed the attacking soldiers while paying attention to the situation around Emoya. 2 hours passed. Tang Xiaoyu's manifestation origin superposition technique did not seem to have made a substantial breakthrough. The only contribution he made was probably sending a portion of the soldiers into the space opened by the manifestation origin superposition technique. After being sent in, those soldiers never came back. Tang Xiaoyu, where did you send them? Kang Xinmu felt that this was an opportunity to destroy the soldiers in the battle formation. They're still in the battle formation. As the caster, Tang Xiaoyu knew very well the exits of the manifestation origin superposition technique that he had just used. Without exception, all of them were in the battle formation. Since all the exits were in the battle formation, the soldiers that had been sent away were still in the battle formation. It was obviously not very realistic to use this to destroy the soldiers in the battle formation. Wait. Soon, Tang Xiaoyu's expression froze. There's an exit outside. Kang Xinmu's expression froze as he waited for Tang Xiaoyu to continue. However, the next moment, Kang Xinmu's entire body froze. Where is Senior? Senior Moya had disappeared. Tang Xiaoyu scratched his head awkwardly. He had tried to superimpose many times and finally managed to open up an exit to the outside world. He had not expected to send Emoya out. Brother Jiang, this combat space is too strange. I can't control it well. Tang Xiaoyu could see that Emoya was very important to Kong Xinmu. If anything happened to Emoya, he would be finished. His wish to meet his idol was even slimmer. Are you sure the exit is outside? Kong Xinmu asked in a deep voice. He sensed the space where Emoya had been. However, just as Tang Xiaoyu had said, this battle space was very strange, and he couldn't sense Emoya's exact location. Instead, he saw a black lightning-like light suddenly attacking from this direction. Out of the way! Kong Xinmu hastily shouted. Tang Xiaoyu did not dare to delay and hurriedly moved away. Some of the black lightning bolts hit the gray shield around Tang Xiaoyu. The shield only twisted a little and easily dissolved the black lightning bolts. Kong Xinmu sighed inwardly. As expected of someone from Heavenly Yuan Palace, he actually had many extraordinary secret treasures. Brother Jiang, I'm sure the exit is outside the battle formation. However, I can't open that passage now. Tang Xiaoyu's words were true. Affected by the battle formation, his manifestation origin superimposition technique was not as useful. If it was senior brother Lien Yi, he would definitely be able to enter and exit the battle formation at will. Kong Xinmu naturally believed Tang Xiaoyu's words. He was only worried that Emoya would be in danger alone outside the battle formation. Myriad Bone Bell? At this moment, the ancient voice suddenly rang out. This time, the voice came from beside Tang Xiaoyu. Tang Xiaoyu was so frightened that he quivered and almost fell into the void that appeared in the battle formation. What Myriad Bone Bell? I don't know. Tang Xiaoyu glanced at the figure that suddenly appeared and moved to the side of Kong Xinmu. The person who spoke was dressed in black armor, and his entire body emitted a sharp aura. No matter where he stood, he couldn't conceal the murderous aura around him. He had the bearing of a general who had fought on countless battlefields. Without a doubt, this person was General Leng Changhong of the ancient martial country, who was also the current city lord of the ancient desolate ancient city. Seeing Leng Changhong appear here, Kong Xinmu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He was in the battle formation, so he would not hurt Emoya. Are you his descendant? Leng Changhong, who appeared, did not pay attention to the surprised Tang Xiaoyu and asked. This voice carried a considerable amount of inner force, causing the surrounding stone pillars to shake violently. The foundation of the battle formation under Tang Xiaoyu's feet also shook. I don't know what you're talking about. Tang Xiaoyu grinned and hurriedly performed the manifestation origin superimposition technique. Just like that, his figure disappeared on the spot. Only Kong Xinmu was left. When Leng Changhong's gaze met Kong Xinmu's, his face was terrifyingly gloomy. You deserve to die. This simple sentence was like the judgment of the Grim Reaper. Kong Xinmu suddenly felt a huge wave of pressure suddenly attack. Fortunately, Kong Xinmu's soul consciousness was strong enough, and with the protection of the soul force, he forcefully withstood the pressure of Leng Changhong's soul consciousness. Leng Changhong waved his hand, and the surrounding stone pillars directly gathered towards Kong Xinmu. However, before it could reach Kong Xinmu's figure disappeared. What a hindrance! Leng Changhong's eyes narrowed, and his hand grabbed the space where Kong Xinmu had just disappeared, and he grabbed Kong Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu back. Kid, do you know whose territory this is? Do you think you can leave just because you know some spatial spells? Leng Changhong looked down at Tang Xiaoyu mockingly. Why do you care? Tang Xiaoyu's principle was that he could lose in a fight, but he could not lose in an argument. Even though it would be a terrible ending. As a matter of fact, as soon as he finished speaking, he was slapped away by Leng Changhong. Brother Jiang, wait for me. As Tang Xiaoyu's voice became softer, his aura also disappeared from this space. The speed at which he was slapped away was so fast that even Kang Xinmu did not have time to grab him back. It's just a shadow. Kang Xinmu could see that what appeared in front of him was just a shadow. Or rather, it was a clone of his soul consciousness. Ignorant child. Leng Changhong sneered. Sharp arrows that covered the sky and the earth came flying towards Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu quickly released the Supreme Dragon Martial Technique, blocking all the incoming arrows. Unfortunately, these sharp arrows did not have the power that they had previously devoured. He took the initiative to attack, directly facing Leng Changhong's shadow clone. Leng Changhong did not hide his mockery towards Kang Xinmu. Chapter 56-55. The reason why he could obtain the recognition of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment in the desolate ancient city was only because he had the inscription on him. Moreover, the fragment here was the weakest piece of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. This was not enough to become a capital that he could rely on. Moreover, since Kang Xinmu could see that he was just a soul consciousness shadow, he should know that ordinary supreme martial technique attacks were completely useless against him. Facing Kang Xinmu's supreme dragon martial technique attack, Leng Zhanghong still just casually slapped out a palm. However, under the collision of the two forces, Leng Zhanghong's expression turned cold. He did not expect that Kang Xinmu's supreme martial technique contained the power to repel him. He looked like an ordinary cultivator, but he had actually comprehended the peerless power of the heart-soul. In the supreme martial technique that this person displayed just now, it also contained the supreme divine fire attribute. Looking at his supreme martial technique, it was decisive and ruthless, and the strength was very tenacious, as if it had the attribute of the supreme power of dark steel. Just how many kinds of supreme divine powers did he grasp? Unless he cultivated a special cultivation method, otherwise, a cultivator could at most possess and comprehend 2 kinds of supreme divine powers. And this kind of comprehension of 2 kinds of supreme divine powers, usually had 2 kinds of innate powers, also known as twin supreme divine powers. Generally speaking, supreme cultivators could only comprehend 1 kind of supreme divine power. This young man actually displayed so many supreme divine powers attributes. Leng Zhanghong was really careless just now. Kang Xinmu followed up with another attack, taking advantage of Leng Zhanghong's slight mistake, and repelled Leng Zhanghong's shadow clone in one fell swoop. The battle here caused a huge commotion, so much so that it attracted many cultivators. In addition to the cultivators in the battle formation, they all received the instructions of the 7 devouring demon sealing art key token, and following the instructions, it was Kang Xinmu's side. Sensing that there was a battle here, he became more and more certain that the wielder of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment was here. After Kang Xinmu roughly memorized the formation base lines of this place, he also quickly left this place. Just as he fled, a large group of cultivators arrived at this place. Where is he? Go after him. Someone tracked Kang Xinmu's aura and chased after him. There were many cultivators chasing after him, and there were also many soldiers in the formation. As long as the core of these soldiers was not destroyed, even if these soldiers were defeated, they would still stand up again. In a way, these soldiers also helped Kang Xinmu block the cultivators who were chasing after him. Of course, Kang Xinmu was not feeling well either. He was also surrounded by a large group of soldiers. The worst part was that Leng Changhong was obviously targeting him. The soldiers seemed to have received some sort of order and gathered around Kang Xinmu. Perhaps it was Kang Xinmu's imagination, but he felt that these soldiers were stronger than the ones he had encountered earlier. Before he found the heart that controlled the soldiers, Kang Xinmu would not continue fighting. He tried his best to leave the battlefield. The compass shows that he's here, but where is he? Suddenly, Kang Xinmu heard a voice and then saw Haifan's figure. Kang Xinmu did not want to have too much to do with this person. However, what surprised Kong Shinmu was that Hai Fan was actually able to freely shuttle through the formation and easily avoid these soldiers' attacks. Moreover, when two soldiers attacked Hai Fan's hand swung to the side, and those two soldiers flew in the direction of his hand gesture. Witnessing this scene with his own eyes, Kong Shinmu was shocked. When Hai Fan waved his hand just now, Kong Shinmu's power of soul did not sense the surrounding space or the flow of aura. Was it related to the 8 trigrams compass in his hand? Tang Xiaoyu said that Hai Fan's Star Devourer could summon special things. Kong Shinmu was more interested in this special thing. Every time the soldiers approached Hai Fan would wave the Star Devourer in his hand. The moment the Star Devourer was waved, the soldiers seemed to be controlled and moved in the opposite direction. Hai Fan easily repelled the soldiers that approached him, and in the blink of an eye, he found where Kong Shinmu was. So it's here. As Hai Fan's voice fell, he passed through the layers of obstacles and arrived in front of Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu was interested in the Star Devourer and naturally did not plan on leaving. Looking at your posture, you know you can't escape. Wouldn't it have been better if you had done this earlier? It would have saved everyone a lot of time. Whether it was Hai Fan's tone or his disdainful attitude, he did not put Kong Shinmu in his eyes at all. As his voice fell, Hai Fan extended his hand towards Kong Shinmu. This action really surprised Kong Shinmu. "You're extending your hand?" Kong Shinmu frowned slightly. "Hurry up and hand over the 2 fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, and I'll let you live. Otherwise, your fate will be very miserable." Hai Fan's words sounded similar to Gufeng's. "What if I don't?" Kong Shinmu raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. "Do you think Tang Xiaoyu can protect you?" Hai Fan had also heard about the collusion between Tang Xiaoyu and Kong Shinmu in the past 2 days. He's just an outer disciple being chased by the Heaven Yuan Palace. When mentioning Tang Xiaoyu, Hai Fan was very disdainful. As for Tang Xiaoyu's origins, or the grudges between Hai Fan and Tang Xiaoyu, Kong Shinmu was not interested in anything. Kong Shinmu also did not want to say anything more to Hai Fan. His figure moved, suddenly approaching Hai Fan. "Ha!" Seeing Kong Shinmu attack first, Hai Fan sneered. Then, Hai Fan put away the 8 trigrams compass in his hand, intending to block Kong Shinmu's attack with his bare hands. Except, at that instant when Kong Shinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique descended, Hai Fan's expression turned grim. The intensity of Kong Shinmu's Supreme Martial Technique seemed to somewhat exceed the intensity that he displayed on the surface. Hai Fan condensed the aura around him and similarly displayed a Supreme Martial Technique to resist Kong Shinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique. This time, both parties exchanged blows. Hai Fan fell into a disadvantage. He did not think that Kong Shinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique was so powerful. It even contained mixed Supreme Divine Power attributes. There was the pressure of the soul, and there was even the scorching feeling of a Supreme Divine Fire. Furthermore, the Supreme Martial Technique that Kong Shinmu displayed was very powerful in itself. After Hai Fan stabilized his figure, he faced Kong Shinmu squarely for the first time. "No wonder you're so arrogant." Hai Fan beckoned with his hand. The 8 trigrams compass appeared in his hand once more. After reciting a mnemonic chant, a cold smile surfaced on Hai Fan's face. Kong Shinmu was still somewhat dumbfounded towards this operation of Hai Fan's. After reciting the mnemonic chant for a while, he did not see anything appear on the 8 trigrams compass either. He only saw him smiling. People who did not know the truth would definitely think that Hai Fan had gone mad. Kong Shinmu had been leaking supreme soul power from the start just now. He was unable to capture any abnormalities that happened on the 8 trigrams compass. Even so, Kong Shinmu did not relax in the slightest either. Most of his attention was focused on the 8 trigrams compass in Hai Fan's hand called Star Devouring. After Hai Fan recited the mnemonic chant, only lines of rune markings appeared on the 8 trigrams compass. Apart from that, there were no additional changes. Something's wrong. There's an abnormality. Chapter 56-56. He nimbly avoided the huge claw and distanced himself from it. Kang Xinmu then saw clearly what the huge claw that suddenly appeared was. It was a huge unknown species. The aura that this species exuded was very strong, equivalent to the strength of a Supreme Cultivator Level 5 Supreme Divine Power. The creature's claw missed, and it once again swung its claw at Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu did not dare to be careless. This guy's body was even bigger than his divine dragon body. Just by waving its claws, it caused the air to crackle. However, usually, this kind of huge species had a common weakness, which was that their movement speed was very slow. Although this species' attack speed was very fast, its movement speed was very slow. Kang Xinmu nimbly came to its back, and then gave it a palm. When the palm strike landed, the unknown colossus actually fell forward. This scene made Kang Xinmu a little confused, thinking that it was some trick of Xiaofan. He focused his mind and released the Supreme Dragon Martial Technique again. The Supreme Dragon Martial Technique accurately hit the back of the huge creature. The huge creature took a solid hit from Kang Xinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique, and its whole body suddenly fell to the ground. It struggled for a while, but it was stunned that it could not take off. "Pull yourself together." Xiaofan saw this and shouted anxiously. However, no matter how he shouted, the huge creature that fell to the ground could only stand up with difficulty, and it could not fly. Unable to take off, it was even more difficult to catch the agile Kang Xinmu. Really useless. Xiaofan frowned and said disdainfully. Then, he chanted the incantation again. Rumble. As a series of violent shaking sounds fell, a humanoid figure wrapped in black shadows appeared out of thin air. The aura on this person was very similar to the huge creature's aura just now. Wait. Where is the huge creature? Kang Xinmu glanced at it and saw that the huge creature had disappeared. Go and kill him. Xiaofan pointed at Kang Xinmu and said coldly. The figure shrouded in black shadows received Xiaofan's order, nodded, and looked at Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu also looked at the figure wrapped in black shadows. With his current ability, he could naturally see through the eyes hidden behind the shadows. It was a pair of eyes that were also filled with black qi, revealing a cold murderous aura. The moment their eyes met, Kang Xinmu was slightly shocked. Suddenly, Kang Xinmu felt an extremely cold aura coming from behind him. The figure shrouded in black shadows had disappeared. The supreme power of the soul followed closely and captured that person's figure. It was right behind him. Kang Xinmu quickly moved to the side. A long sword suddenly stabbed at the spot where he was standing just now. That black longsword of unknown quality almost pierced through space. The sword missed, and that person's eyes once again fell on Kang Xinmu. He was so fast that even the supreme power of the soul could barely capture his movement trajectory. The speed of this person summoned by Xiaofan was probably only comparable to the manifestation essence superposition technique. Kang Xinmu's combat power was not weak, but his weakness was that he was too slow. At first, he could still deal with that person, but as time passed, the other party would appear one step ahead of him. After exchanging blows, Kang Xinmu was surprised. Not only was the other party agile, but his combat power was also very strong. So far, Kang Xinmu had not found any breakthrough point from that person. He only guessed that this person was not a cultivator from the world he was in. This guess was not groundless. Tang Xiaoyu said that Xiaofan's Star Devourer could summon existences from other places to help him fight. Whether it was the huge creature just now or the mysterious person that appeared now, they were all existences from another world. As for the identity of this kind of existence, probably only Haifan knew. Kang Xinmu could not find the other party's weakness, and thus could not find a breakthrough point. He could only use Haifan himself as the breakthrough point. His thoughts were naturally seen by that mysterious person. Moreover, that mysterious person would always be one step ahead of Kang Xinmu's attack. From the mysterious person's behavior, Kang Xinmu increasingly confirmed his guess. The breakthrough point was Haifan. Although Kang Xinmu could not defeat the mysterious person summoned by Haifan in one move, he could still exchange blows with the other party. That mysterious person wrapped in black shadows, whether it was martial arts or the power of the soul, was very strong. The two were in a stalemate for 15 minutes. Hurry up! Suddenly, Haifan urged. Kang Xinmu's eyes narrowed, and he glanced at Haifan. Haifan's condition looked very bad, his face pale, and the aura around him fluctuated. As soon as the order was given, the figure shrouded in black shadows suddenly disappeared from where he stood. After a few exchanges, although Kang Xinmu could not defeat the other party in one move, he had basically grasped the other party's attacking habits. This person liked to attack from the back. Therefore, when Kang Xinmu sensed that the aura in the space was not right, he swept his body away, always able to avoid the opponent's attack. After a few breaths. Hurry up! All of a sudden, Haifan hurriedly urged. Kang Xinmu's supreme power of the soul had been paying attention to Haifan's every move. For Haifan, the amount of energy he had expended in these few breaths of time was not a small amount. However, Haifan's order was very deterrent. As this sentence fell, Kang Xinmu clearly felt the aura around the figure wrapped in black shadows change greatly. The entire space was suddenly enveloped by a cold and harsh aura, so much so that even the soldiers in the battle formation were all defeated. The soldiers were all knocked down, one by one falling into the void where the battle formation appeared, and disappeared without a trace. The person's attack did not stop because of the soldiers' obstruction, but instead became more and more ferocious, closing in on Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu knew that with his current ability to fight against this unknown existence, there was a certain degree of difficulty, so he did not choose to fight head-on, but focused on defense. In this way, after a few rounds with the opponent, Kang Xinmu keenly sensed that the opponent's aura suddenly weakened. It was not that the opponent suddenly weakened, but the opponent was being rejected by this space. Kang Xinmu gathered the supreme power of the soul, and maximized the power of the 7 devouring demons sealing art. Although the engraving was not activated, but with the power of the first realm of the 7 devouring demons sealing art, Kang Xinmu saw the scene just now. Just when Kang Xinmu felt the aura of the figure wrapped in black shadows weaken, a whirlpool door appeared behind the figure. This whirlpool door was the same as the one that appeared when Kang Xinmu died not long ago. Kang Xinmu used the Supreme Dragon martial skill to push Haifan back. Haifan retreated several steps until his back bumped into a stone pillar. Only then did he stop. Kang Xinmu glanced at Haifan. Just as he guessed, Haifan's body was very weak. His entire combat power relied on the contracted life form summoned by Star Devourer. Being pushed back by Kang Xinmu, Haifan did not give up. He stabilized his body once again. A pair of eyes filled with coldness stared fixedly at Kang Xinmu. Seeing that Kang Xinmu was still fiddling with Star Devourer, Haifan seemed to have made some kind of decision. His hands rapidly formed a complicated seal. As Haifan's hand seals changed, the Star Devourer in Kang Xinmu's hands suddenly lit up with a gray light. The sudden light made Kang Xinmu slightly surprised. The 8 trigrams compass, which had not changed at all before, lit up with a gray light, and several cryptic veined patterns appeared on it. Immediately after, a chilling aura was emitted from within. In this instant, Kang Xinmu felt the space beside him suddenly distort. There was an unfamiliar aura leaking out from within. This was a summon? Kang Xinmu glanced over and saw Haifan's hands continuously changing hand seals. It was precisely because Haifan's hands were constantly changing that the 8 trigrams compass had such a change. Kang Xinmu focused his eyes, silently memorizing the changes in Haifan's hand seals. He also memorized the cryptic patterns that appeared on Star Devourer. "Come out!" Haifan suddenly gave a low shout. A bloated figure wrapped in a grey robe appeared out of thin air. The place where the person appeared was the place where Kang Xinmu had felt the space distort. The moment the person appeared, he went straight for Kang Xinmu. From the moment the other party moved, Kang Xinmu could roughly sense the other party's strength. He was not as strong as the person wrapped in black shadows from before. Even so, it was still very difficult for Kang Xinmu to deal with him. "Bring Star Devourer back for me," Haifan ordered. "What are you saying?" Kang Xinmu glanced at Haifan, then looked back at Star Devourer. As if afraid that someone would snatch it away, he put it away. This action fell into Haifan's eyes, and he was about to explode. "Something that doesn't belong to you, even if you hide it in your heart, it still doesn't belong to you." Haifan's hands continuously changed hand seals. His entire body was suddenly enveloped by a grey aura. At the same time, the 8 trigrams compass in Kang Xinmu's hands violently shook. As the 8 trigrams compass shook, it also revealed the contract imprint on it. It was a symbol of water. It was clearly Haifan's contract imprint. Seeing Haifan and Star Devourer's contract imprint appear, Kang Xinmu released the supreme power of the soul. How could Haifan not know Kang Xinmu's intentions? He could immediately see that Kang Xinmu was trying to erase his contract imprint. "Lu Zi, what are you spacing out for?" Haifan saw that Lu Zi was still standing there motionless, and hurriedly urged. Lu Zi was the name of the grey-robed contract life form that Haifan had summoned. After receiving Haifan's order, Lu Zi did not immediately act. Instead, he hesitated. This action really made Haifan anxious. Haifan urged again, and he himself also leaped towards Kang Xinmu. If he did not hurry, his Star Devourer would be snatched away by Kang Xinmu. "Lu Zi, the Star Devourer has been destroyed. You can forget about leaving that world for the rest of your life." Haifan's voice was low. Hearing this, Lu Zi's body turned into a series of afterimages, and he approached Kang Xinmu. Haifan himself also approached Kang Xinmu, in order to seize the opportunity to take back the Star Devourer. Kang Xinmu's power of the soul had already enveloped the entire 8 trigrams compass, and he had also covered the contract imprint. "You still want to erase my contract imprint?" Haifan's face was terrifyingly gloomy. It could not be denied that Kang Xinmu was indeed very strong, especially that Supreme Dragon martial technique, which was comparable to the vast majority of supreme rank cultivators. So what? Kang Xinmu's Supreme Dragon martial technique was very strong, but correspondingly, his soul consciousness was somewhat lacking. If he wanted to sign a contract, he needed to have a sufficiently strong soul consciousness. Otherwise, it was easy to be devoured by the contract life form. With just Kang Xinmu's soul consciousness, wanting to erase his contract imprint was simply a fool's dream. Chapter 56-58. Kang Xinmu, what did you do? Haifan's expression was extremely dark. He stared at Kang Xinmu with an unfathomable cold light. His hands quickly formed a complicated seal. He muttered to himself in an attempt to take back control of the Star Devourer. Kang Xinmu ignored Haifan. He gathered supreme soul power and erased Haifan's contract imprint on the Star Devourer. What kind of soul consciousness is this? Haifan gathered his soul consciousness and attempted to restore the contract imprint. The result shocked him. Star Devourer had condensed an enormous soul consciousness, and his own soul consciousness was actually unable to cover it. The Star Devourer was his artifact, but he had lost control of it. A soul consciousness stronger than yours, Kang Shinmu said coolly. Haifan gathered his soul consciousness but was still unable to resist Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness. Soon, Haifan sensed the uniqueness of Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness. Rather than saying that Kang Shinmu had used his soul consciousness to erase his contract imprint, it was more accurate to say that Kang Shinmu had used supreme soul power to erase his contract imprint. Based on what Kang Shinmu had shown so far, his supreme soul power was at least at the 5th level. After exchanging blows, Haifan knew that Kang Shinmu had at least 2 kinds of supreme divine powers. Whether it was the power of the supreme divine fire or the power of the supreme profound iron, they were among the top existences in the same realm. And now, he was actually displaying the supreme power of the soul. Haifan was truly shocked. With the 5th level of supreme soul power, it was just a matter of time to break his contract imprint. Moreover, Kang Shinmu's techniques were not limited. It was impossible to guess what kind of supreme divine power he would use in the next moment. While he still had control over the Star Devourer, Haifan ordered Lu Zi to take down Kang Shinmu. As long as he defeated Kang Shinmu, he could take back the Star Devourer. After receiving Haifan's order, Lu Zi's figure flashed, arriving in front of Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu's entire body was enveloped by the supreme soul force, forcing Lu Zi to temporarily be unable to approach Kang Shinmu. In addition, she was very suspicious about whether the wielder of Star Devourer was Kang Shinmu, so her attacks were slightly hesitant. Lu Zi was very clear that as a contracted creature, she absolutely could not disobey any of her master's orders, nor could she attack her master. She had to obey her master unconditionally. Now that Kang Shinmu wielded the Star Devourer, it caused Lu Zi's decision to waver. Haifan mainly cultivated mental power, and her magic tool was also a summoning-type magic tool. He had obtained the Star Devourer by chance during a training trip. The method of obtaining it was also rather mysterious. Dark red blood instantly flowed out, but it did not drip onto the ground. Instead, it floated in the air. In the void in front of him, an array formation seemed to appear. The blood covered the array formation, and fused with it, causing the array formation to completely appear. The moment the blood-red array formation appeared, it enveloped Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu only felt that the spiritual energy in the space around him was instantly evaporated, and he felt a kind of scorching heat. Like a blood prison, the array formation firmly trapped Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu could clearly feel the temperature around him rapidly rising. This scorching heat ignored the existence of the black dragon scales, and directly drilled into his body. Blood sacrifice. Kang Shinmu recognized the array formation that trapped him. It was a very extreme array formation. Just like how the demon god race's Ao Tong had sacrificed his soul and consciousness, the blood sacrifice was to sacrifice the power of one's own bloodline, and thus obtain great power in a short period of time. As Haifan executed the technique, the scorching heat within the array grew stronger. Haifan's own bloodline power was also rapidly dissipating. The blood sacrifice could not be underestimated, and Kang Shinmu did not dare to underestimate his opponent. He immediately used all his skills, wanting to break the array formation before the blood sacrifice completely seeped into his body. Unfortunately, his strength was affected by the blood sacrifice, and his offensive power was clearly insufficient. Lu Zi, help me get rid of him. Kang Shinmu's gaze landed on Lu Zi. Yes, master. Receiving Kang Shinmu's order, Lu Zi's figure moved, and in a flash, she appeared behind Haifan. With one hand, she grabbed Haifan's back, destroying his heart. Chapter 56-59. Lu Zi, you. Haifan didn't even finish his sentence before he received another solid palm strike from Lu Zi. Lu Zi didn't hold back at all. This palm strike contained a powerful evil energy that caused the surrounding space to become cold. Xiaofan died, but his blood sacrifice formation didn't break because of this. It was still operating. However, the strength of the blood sacrifice formation mainly depended on the strength of the caster's blood sacrifice art. Now that Xiaofan was dead, the blood sacrifice formation didn't have a caster to provide blood sacrifice art. Its power gradually weakened. Kang Xinmu suddenly released his supreme power of the soul and forced out the blood sacrifice formation's power that had invaded his body. He also took the opportunity to break the blood sacrifice formation. Even though the blood sacrifice formation was broken, Kang Xinmu didn't dare to relax. Whether it was the blood sacrifice formation now or the soul-abandoning art not long ago, they were all vicious arts that used one's life to pay for another's. To put it simply, using such arts would shorten the caster's lifespan. It was precisely because the price was great that it was powerful enough. It could often subdue the opponent or perish together. Kang Xinmu completely released his soul consciousness and checked his body's condition. After ensuring that there were no remnants of the blood sacrifice formation's power, he calmed his mind. During the inspection, there was something that puzzled Kang Xinmu. At that time, the blood sacrifice's power had invaded his body with an unstoppable force. Most of it had gathered in his soul consciousness. He was certain that the power was enormous, but when he inspected himself just now, there was only an extremely small portion of the blood sacrifice's power left. The strength of the blood sacrifice's power that was left was also not as strong as before. The power in Kang Xinmu's body quickly circulated several times, but he didn't find any abnormal power. Even his soul consciousness and sea of consciousness were calm, without any abnormalities. Cultivators would be unusually cautious when dealing with anything, even the tiniest trace of abnormality. Kang Xinmu was the same. Since he discovered that the blood sacrifice's power was greatly different from before, he naturally had to be careful. Jiang Xinwu's soul consciousness was as calm as he had felt. There were no ripples, and there were no abnormalities. However, there were circles of white mist lingering on the surface of his soul, consciousness, and sea of consciousness. This layer of white mist was very faint. If one's soul consciousness didn't linger too long, they might not be able to discover it. This layer of white mist was the supreme holy ice domain that Kang Xinmu had devoured from the perished space some time ago. Kang Xinmu did not comprehend the power of the supreme holy ice, so he naturally could not control the supreme holy ice domain as he pleased. The supreme sacred ice domain that he had devoured was originally within the extreme 10-directional devil seal. However, as Kang Xinmu continued to fight, the supreme holy ice domain gradually gathered in his mind and sea of consciousness. Kang Xinmu was unable to unleash the supreme holy ice domain, but the supreme holy ice domain was silently refining the energy that had invaded Kang Xinmu's body. Once he grasped the power of the supreme holy ice, he could create the power of the holy ice out of thin air. Correspondingly, once he comprehended the supreme holy ice domain, he could use heaven and earth as a medium to create an ice domain. The ice domain could assimilate all the energy within it. In other words, it could refine all the energy within the domain and make it a part of the ice domain. The blood sacrifice energy that had invaded Kang Xinmu's body was refined by the supreme holy ice domain the moment it touched Kang Xinmu's mind and sea of consciousness. The blood sacrifice energy that Kang Xinmu had forced out was considered useless and useless. Perhaps even Kang Xinmu himself did not know that his mind and sea of consciousness had already been occupied by the supreme holy ice domain. It could be said that Kang Xinmu's mind and sea of consciousness were within the range of the supreme holy ice domain. This was why every time an external force invaded Kang Xinmu's mind and sea of consciousness, it was unable to affect Kang Xinmu's mind and sea of consciousness. Of course, Kang Xinmu had yet to realize that this was the effect of the supreme holy ice domain. This subordinate greets master. After taking care of Xiaofan, Lu Zi came over and bowed respectfully to Kang Xinmu. Only when Lu Zi spoke did Kang Xinmu realize that the other party was a woman. Kang Xinmu could not help but size up Lu Zi again. This clear voice that was like the chirping of an oriole was truly unable to be associated with her bloated body. Stand up. Kang Xinmu was not a person who paid too much attention to etiquette. Yes, master. Lu Zi responded respectfully, but still lowered her head and stood to the side. Thank you for just now. It was thanks to Lu Zi defeating Xiaofan that Kang Xinmu was able to break through the blood sacrifice formation. This is what this subordinate should do. Lu Zi's words and actions were filled with respect towards Kang Xinmu. After Kang Xinmu had placed a contract imprint on Star Eater, he had become its new master. When he had placed the contract imprint, he had only received a portion of information regarding Star Eater. But now, with Xiaofan's death, any information regarding Xiaofan's existence on Star Eater had disappeared. When Star Eater had erased Xiaofan's information, Kang Xinmu's soul consciousness had completely taken over Star Eater and obtained control over it. The Supreme Sacred Ice Domain had long since encompassed Kang Xinmu's entire soul consciousness and sea of consciousness. When his soul consciousness had taken over Star Eater, it had also indirectly brought the Supreme Sacred Ice Domain into it. The Supreme Sacred Ice Domain had covered Star Eater and completely erased all traces of Xiaofan and Xiaofan's previous master. Now, only Kang Xinmu's power was left on Star Eater. Information about Star Devourer also appeared in his mind. Through Star Eater, Kang Xinmu had a rough understanding of Lu Zi's origins. Lu Zi came from a parallel world, the other world. From Star Eater, Kang Xinmu understood that the other world's existence was equivalent to the parallel universe of the world he was in. It was the other side of the vortex gate he had seen when he perished. For now, Kang Xinmu didn't know what kind of existence that vortex gate was, but he had a vague feeling that it was connected to multiple worlds like Tang Xiaoyu's 10,000 manifestations origin superimposition art. The other world was just one of them. Lu Zi was an ancient spirit from the other world. The ancient spirits had existed in the other world for generations. They were a race that cultivated spiritual power. However, ancient spirits couldn't leave the other world. They could only be summoned, and they couldn't leave the other world for a long time. The length of time they could leave the other world was related to the strength of the contractor's soul consciousness. Star Eater was a magical tool, the 8-god star plate. It was a summoning magical tool. The 8-god star plate lacked a bottom. As for what this bottom was and what it could do, Kang Xinmu didn't know. Lu Zi didn't know either. Since the 8-god star plate lacked a bottom, it could only sign contracts with 5 ancient spirits at most. This was the first time Kang Xinmu had come into contact with this kind of magical tool. He didn't know much about the 5 ancient spirits. Lu Zi was one of the 5, and her battle prowess was second only to Cruel. Cruel was the man shrouded in black shadows. Chapter 56-60. During the battle against Xiaofan just now, he had only summoned 3 contracted creatures. The first contracted creature he had summoned was a colossal creature. Kang Xinmu couldn't tell what it was. It could even be said that Kang Xinmu didn't know the true form of the first colossal creature. Then came Cruel, who was wreathed in black shadows, and Lu Zi, who was now standing in front of him. Aside from Lu Zi and Cruel, Kang Xinmu couldn't tell which of the other 3 was Spirit, Origin Breaker, and Divine Light. Among the 5 contracted creatures, Lu Zi was the most special one. Aside from obeying the contract marks, she only recognized Star Devouring, or the 8-god star disk. When Xiaofan had summoned Lu Zi, Kang Xinmu had already obtained the 8-god star disk, which had given Lu Zi the first impression that Kang Xinmu would be her new master. That was why she had hesitated when Xiaofan had given the order. As for the other 4, Kang Xinmu couldn't summon them for the time being. Lu Zi, who else is an ancient spirit other than you? Now that Kong Shinmu had become the new master of Lu Zi and the other 4 contracted creatures, it was only natural that he should learn more about them. Master, there are no ancient spirits other than me, Lu Zi answered respectfully. Then they. Kong Shinmu was somewhat surprised. Through the 8-god star disk, he had learned that the ancient spirits were the most likely to sign contracts with contract masters in the other world. It wasn't that the other races didn't have any, but it was more difficult to do so. That was because the other races could leave the other world after their cultivation reached a certain level. This was something that the ancient spirits couldn't do. As for the reason, it seemed to have something to do with the origin of the other world. The 8-god star disk was only a summoning magic tool, and a broken one at that. Therefore, it didn't have any information about the other world. Master, I don't know which race they are. Lu Zi's reply caused complicated emotions to emerge in Jiang Shenwu's heart. It was no exaggeration to say that the ancient spirits were the humblest race in the other world. The ancient spirits were the most populous race in the other world, but even that couldn't change their lowly nature. From Lu Zi's respectful attitude towards him, Kong Shinmu could tell that their humbleness was deeply ingrained in their bones. If they really fought, with Kong Shinmu's current strength, he would not be a match for Lu Zi. However, Lu Zi was a contracted creature, a slave. She could only obey her contractor, Kong Shinmu, unconditionally. Kong Shinmu did not continue to ask questions and began to study the 8-god star plate. The 8-god star plate was a summoning magic tool. The contract master had to activate the 8-god star plate with his soul consciousness and use it to open the door to the other world. Then, he could summon the contracted creature from the other world. After leaving the contract mark, Kong Shinmu attempted to use his soul consciousness to activate the 8-god star compass for the first time. His soul consciousness was much stronger than Haifan's. He easily activated the 8-god star plate. The 8-god star plate also successfully opened the door to the other world. The moment the door to the other world opened, Kong Shinmu clearly saw the scene behind the door. It was a world shrouded in grey mist. There was a twisted whirlpool door that connected that world to this world. The whirlpool door only lasted for a few breaths before it closed. Kong Shinmu also successfully summoned the contracted creature. It was that behemoth. As soon as the behemoth appeared, it moved its head towards Kong Shinmu. Its eyes, which were as big as Kong Shinmu's fists, stared at Kong Shinmu without blinking. Kong Shinmu was a little flustered by the behemoth's stare and moved to the side. The behemoth's eyes followed him. No matter where he went, they followed him. Kong Shinmu helplessly shook the 8-god star plate in his hand. Only then did the behemoth understand. He respectfully bowed to Kong Shinmu. This subordinate greets master. When he knelt, the stone pillars in the entire battle formation shook. Before Kong Shinmu could say anything, he saw the surrounding stone pillars turn into countless sharp arrows, flying towards him. Just as he was about to attack, the behemoth suddenly stood up and blocked the sharp arrows with his bare hands. When the stone pillars turned into sharp arrows, the surrounding soldiers also rushed over. However, Lu Zi blocked all of them. Kong Shinmu secretly sighed. Fortunately, he had the 8-god star plate. Otherwise, he would have wasted a lot of time dealing with these stone pillars and soldiers. After resolving the current crisis, Lu Zi and the behemoth once again respectfully walked in front of Kong Shinmu. Master, please guide me for the rest of my life. Lu Zi's clear voice rang out. Lu Zi. You guys get up. Kong Shinmu looked at the behemoth, not knowing how to address him. Master, the name Lu Zi was given by the previous master. Now that you are this subordinate's new master, you can give this subordinate a new name, said Lu Zi. This subordinate agrees, said the behemoth. That is your name. It has nothing to do with the previous master or the new master. From the moment you are called by this name, that name will be your symbol for the rest of your life." Kang Xinmu gently shook his head. He had seized Haifan's 8-god star plate, but he had never thought of changing the creatures he had contracted with, nor did he think of changing their names. When Lu Zi and the behemoth heard Kang Xinmu's words, they were slightly stunned. Then, they knelt down to express their gratitude. Through Lu Zi, Kang Xinmu finally learned of the behemoth's name. As for Peyuan and God Light, Lu Zi and Cha had never seen them before. Haifan had inadvertently signed a contract with Peyuan. At that time, Peyuan had been seriously injured, and Haifan had signed a contract with him to save him. Peyuan's cultivation was too strong, and it took a lot of energy to summon him. So far, Haifan had only actively summoned Peyuan twice. As for God Light, according to Lu Zi, before Haifan had obtained the 8-god star plate, it had already formed a contract with God Light. At that time, there was no contract mark on the 8-god star plate. Haifan only knew of the existence of God Light after leaving a contract mark on it. However, Haifan had never summoned God Light, and God Light had never appeared. Even when Haifan had faced several life and death crises, God Light did not appear. Kang Xinmu believed this. Just like just now, when Haifan died, God Light did not appear. The existence of God Light had become a mystery. With Lu Zi and Qi around, the soldiers in the battle formation, as well as the occasional flying arrows, were no longer a problem. This also included the many cultivators who came to encircle Kang Xinmu. Cha relied on his powerful physical strength to break through many stone pillars, which had a great impact on the battle formation. No more soldiers appeared on Kang Xinmu's side. Isn't that the Star Devourer? How could it be in Kang Xinmu's hands? Some cultivators recognized the 8-god compass in Kang Xinmu's hands and exclaimed. Everyone knew that the Star Devourer was the magic tool of Limitless Pavilion's disciple, Haifan. Now that the Star Devourer had fallen into the hands of Kang Xinmu, and Kang Xinmu could order Lu Zi, what did this mean? Chapter 56-61. Kang Xinmu actually killed a disciple of Wuxia Pavilion. That was the first reaction of all the cultivators present. Who was Kang Xinmu? In the eyes of most cultivators, he was just a small character who had not been heard of. However, the magic tool in the hands of this minor character was a magic tool that everyone coveted. Recently, the most popular rumor was that Kang Xinmu had the Great Devil Seal of 10 Directions. It was a sacred item of the universe. How could a nobody like Kang Xinmu have a sacred item of the universe? Therefore, many cultivators were skeptical about this rumor. The main reason why they targeted Kang Xinmu was not the Great Devil Seal of 10 Directions, but the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The cultivators who were trapped in the battle formation and entered the ancient desolate city all saw the key token of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. At that time, Tang Xiaoyu pointed out the way, and the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was in this courtyard. This proved that Kang Xinmu did not have the 7 devouring demon sealing art. But not long ago, the key token clearly pointed to Kang Xinmu in the battle formation. Moreover, it also showed that Kang Xinmu had 2 fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. All the cultivators who came to the secret realm knew that there was only 1 fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the secret realm. However, the key token showed that Kang Xinmu had 2 fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. This could only mean that Kang Xinmu already had 1 fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art before he entered the secret realm. In other words, he relied on the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art to find the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the ancient desolate city. It could be said that if not for the 7 devouring demon sealing art, many cultivators who came to the secret realm would not have noticed Kang Xinmu. On the other hand, Haifan was a disciple of Wuxia Pavilion. Wuxia Pavilion was one of the top sects in the outer region. This time, they sent their disciples to the secret realm because they had a mission. As for what the mission was, the other sects did not know. However, all the cultivators present knew that those who offended the Limitless Pavilion would not have a good ending. On par with the Limitless Pavilion was the Tianyuan Palace. As large sects of the same level, the Heavenly Origin Palace and the Limitless Pavilion had completely different styles of handling matters. There was a very good example of this. Tang Xiaoyu, an outer disciple of the Heaven Yuan Palace, had barged into a secret realm without permission. He had peeped into something that he should not have known, violating the rules of the Heaven Yuan Palace. The Heavenly Origin Palace had sent senior brother Lien Yi to capture Tang Xiaoyu. Since they said they would send Lien Yi to arrest them, they sent Lien Yi to arrest them. They didn't add any more manpower. Lien Yi didn't kill either. People who didn't know better would think that Tang Xiaoyu had only made a small mistake. If Tang Xiaoyu was in the Everlasting Pavilion, he wouldn't even be able to leave the Everlasting Pavilion after peeking at something he shouldn't have. He would be punished on the spot. Wuxia Pavilion's style of doing things was that if they could use their fists, they would never use their mouth. Kong Xinmu killed a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion. This time, he will suffer. However, the conflict between Kong Xinmu and the Wuxia Pavilion was not something that the cultivators present should think about. Their goal from the beginning was the fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. Kong Xinmu looked at the situation around him. There were no less than 100 cultivators gathered here. Moreover, the aura of supreme divine power that leaked out from each of them was at least at the 5th level. The soldiers on the battle formation were also appearing one after another. There was another thing that made Kong Xinmu a little uneasy. As these cultivators made their moves, the combat power of the soldiers in the battle formation seemed to be gradually increasing. The stone pillars that were originally in the battle formation were arranged like arrays. Kong Xinmu could feel the existence of a domain from it. When he first entered this secret realm, Kong Xinmu had mistakenly entered the ancient battlefield domain. The feeling this domain gave him now was very similar to the ancient battlefield domain that he had entered. It was just that the killing aura in the battlefield domain was much denser than the ancient battlefield domain from before. There was no doubt that this was General Leng Changhong's lifetime cultivation. As a general, he had killed countless people in his life. His attainments in the battlefield domain were not to be underestimated. The battlefield domain quietly spread out and enveloped the entire battle formation. Including Kong Xinmu, the cultivators in the battle formation all felt the existence of the battlefield domain. But each of them were very indifferent and still chose to focus on dealing with Kong Xinmu. Kong Xinmu quietly released the power of the Supreme Soul, looking for a breakthrough point. Unfortunately, as the battlefield domain spread out, his power of the Supreme Soul was also restricted, and he could not use it as he pleased. Tang Xiaoyu used the 10,000 elephant superposition technique and mistakenly sent Emoya out of the battle formation. As for himself, he was trapped in the battle formation. Finally, he followed these cultivators to find Kong Xinmu. Tang Xiaoyu naturally heard about the matter of Kong Xinmu killing Wuxia Pavilion disciple Haifan and robbing him of his treasure. He could not help but be surprised. This Kong Xinmu looked like an honest person, but he was actually so ruthless. Not much, he seemed to have paid attention to the wrong point. Not to mention Haifan's own cultivation, just the few contracted creatures that Haifan had signed were all experts. Kong Xinmu was actually able to beat those contracted creatures, so he really had some skills. What Tang Xiaoyu found most inconceivable was that Kong Xinmu could already summon contracted creatures through Star Devour. Looking at Lu Zi and the big guy called Gu standing beside him, Tang Xiaoyu felt a chill. These seemingly ordinary people's true strength was indeed unfathomable. With Lu Zi and Gu around, these cultivators would not be able to get close to Kong Xinmu for a while. Kong Xinmu also did not want to deal with them too much. If he could escape, he would not continue fighting. He had already obtained the second fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing art, so it was time to leave the battle formation. "Brother Jiang, over here." Tang Xiaoyu stood on a stone pillar and waved at Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu glanced at the stone pillar and found that there were blood-colored patterns gradually appearing on it. "Hurry up and come down. This is the killing aura of the battlefield domain, it might be able to control these stone pillars and those soldiers." Tang Xiaoyu jumped down and glanced at the blood-colored patterns. The core of the battlefield domain is to replicate the killing aura of the battlefield, using it to create the aura of battle, and then condense it into offensive power. This was not the first time Kang Xinmu had seen the battlefield domain, but this was the first time he heard about the core of the battlefield domain. If it was to replicate the killing aura of the battlefield, then how powerful would the battlefield domain be? I feel that replicating a battlefield is something that every cultivator who has comprehended the battlefield domain can do. The difference is, at this point, Tang Xiaoyu's expression became serious. Cultivators can replicate the killing aura of multiple battlefields. These words enlightened Kang Xinmu. Leng Changhong was a famous general of the ancient martial country. He had fought on countless battlefields in his life, and the amount of battle aura he could replicate was immeasurable. Chapter 56-62. Although I'm not a cultivator like Leng Changhong when he was a general, I can roughly guess from his battle formation that there are at least 2 battlefields that his battle domain has replicated. Tang Xiaoyu said in a deep voice. Perhaps General Leng Changhong's battle domain could replicate more battlefields, but Tang Xiaoyu didn't dare to think about replicating 2 battlefields. For him, he could only risk his life to replicate 2 battlefields. Kang Xinmu didn't deny Tang Xiaoyu's guess. For now, the battle domain displayed in the battle formation had already replicated 2 battlefields. As for whether the replicated battlefields would increase or not, there was no indication from the battle domain for the time being. The battle domain that replicated 2 battlefields enveloped the entire battle formation. All the cultivators in the battle formation could feel the pressure brought by it. The moment the battle formation's battle domain unfolded, some of the cultivators stopped moving. They stared at Kang Xinmu's direction and immediately guessed General Leng Changhong's intentions. From the beginning, the one who released the clue of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment was actually Leng Changhong. The purpose of attracting so many cultivators here was to use the power of these cultivators to completely destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. As for how to use the power of these cultivators, they could refer to the patrolling soldiers in the ancient desolate city. Aside from the soldiers who had a living heart, many of the soldiers were other cultivators who had entered the ancient desolate city. Once they lost, they would be refined into puppets by Leng Changhong. Daoist Shou Yang was the first cultivator to enter the ancient desolate city. Even he couldn't defeat Leng Changhong. In the end, Daoist Shou Yang couldn't escape and became one of the many soldiers in the ancient desolate city. However, he more or less retained his consciousness. He once persuaded Kang Xinmu to leave the ancient desolate city, probably because he learned that Kang Xinmu had the core engraving of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment and deduced all of Leng Changhong's plans, so he let him leave. The cultivators who weren't refined into puppets by the puppet insects in the ancient desolate city were all brought to this battle formation by the clue of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. It could be said that this battle formation was a game of chess played by Leng Changhong. The chessboard had been arranged, and only the chess pieces were left. Previously, some people guessed that the chess pieces were the soldiers. Little did they know that they were the true chess pieces on the chessboard. The chess game had already begun. How could the life and death of the people in the chess game be determined by the heavens? The battlefield domain in the battle formation had already been activated, and the 2 replicated battlefields included all the cultivators within. The cultivators who came here were all above supreme beings. However, even if they were at the same level, there were still countless differences. Even though they were all supreme cultivators, the cultivators' comprehension of supreme divine power was not uniform, which also meant that their cultivation was different. Cultivators below the 5th level of supreme divine power were affected by the battlefield domain the moment it swept over. When the replicated battlefield arrived, he had already lost the ability to resist and was trapped in the battle formation. Cultivators at the 5th to 6th level of the supreme divine power level maintained a clear mind and consciousness. However, at this time, they were unable to protect themselves and had no time to care about Kang Shinmu. Of the hundreds of people who entered the formation, more than 10 cultivators had reached the 8th level of supreme divine power or even higher. Facing the 2 replicated battlefields in the battlefield domain, they were at ease. They were even thinking about how to use this opportunity to seize Kang Shinmu's fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. There were 3 people who were not affected by the battlefield domain at all. Rather than saying that they were trapped in the battle formation, it was more accurate to say that they entered the battle formation of their own accord. Among them was an ordinary-looking youth, Qing Fu, who was holding a folding fan, and Gu Tianzi, who was following closely behind Qing Fu. The 3 were not far from Kang Shinmu. The one who made the 3 pay attention to Kang Shinmu was Tang Xiaoyu. Although Tang Xiaoyu wasn't an illustrious person, his identity was rather special. He used the name of a Heavenly Yuan Palace disciple to stir up trouble outside, but Heavenly Yuan Palace still only sent a righteous eldest senior brother to capture Tang Xiaoyu. And Heavenly Yuan Palace had clearly stated that they wanted eldest senior brother to capture Tang Xiaoyu personally. Why was Tang Xiaoyu together with Kang Shinmu? Did they know each other? The battlefield domain of the battle formation had already expanded. The entire battle formation was covered in a layer of blood energy. Kang Shinmu clearly felt the pressure increase. He did not know how many battlefields the battlefield domain had replicated, but he knew that the pressure had suddenly increased. This feeling made Kang Shinmu feel threatened. "Brother Jiang, calm down first. I'll think of a way to get you out." Tang Xiaoyu's expression turned serious. He released his soul consciousness and wrapped it around him and Kang Shinmu. Then, he started to study the myriad origin superimposition art. This was the first time Kang Shinmu felt Tang Xiaoyu's power. The soul consciousness that leaked out caused Kang Shinmu to be surprised. He knew that Tang Xiaoyu's cultivation was above the 7th level of divine power, but it seemed that he was even stronger. Kang Shinmu used the power of the soul to remove the pressure brought by the battlefield domain. Relying on the supreme divine fire domain, he blocked a portion of the battlefield domain's attack. The instant the supreme divine fire domain collided with the battlefield domain, Kang Shinmu's mind was suddenly shocked. The battlefield domain's replicated battlefields were actually increasing. There were already 3 levels. The most obvious change was that the blood energy in the battle formation was thicker. And at this time, what surprised Kang Shinmu was that his 7 devouring devil sealing arts core mark suddenly opened. For a moment, he took in everything in the entire battlefield domain. In the sky above the battlefield domain, there were different levels of blood energy floating. There were a total of 3 levels. Just as he was sizing it up, the 4th level of blood energy appeared. Kang Shinmu instantly understood. This was the battlefield replicated by the battlefield domain. There were a total of 4 battlefields. Holy shit, is this person a madman? Tang Xiaoyu suddenly cursed. When he spoke, a bloody aura spread out. Kang Shinmu turned his head and saw that Tang Xiaoyu was injured. "Brother Jiang, hold on a while more." Although he was injured by the pressure of the 4 battlefields, Tang Xiaoyu quickly adjusted his state. Moreover, Tang Xiaoyu's state was recovering. Kang Shinmu was not a heartless person. Tang Xiaoyu thought of ways to bring him out, so he naturally protected Tang Xiaoyu. Without hesitation, he released the power of the soul to detect any abnormalities in the surroundings. The battlefield domain replicated 4 battlefields. The cultivators in the battle formation were all refined into puppets one by one, becoming a part of the soldiers in the battle formation. The cultivators who became puppets had completely lost their self-awareness and listened to Leng Zhanghong's orders. The dozen or so 7th-level Supreme Divine Power cultivators were struggling to resist the pressure of the battlefield domain. Qing Fu and the other two only swept a cold glance at the struggling cultivators, then their gazes once again landed on Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu. They could see that Tang Xiaoyu was using the manifestation origin superposition technique. Tang Xiaoyu, who was using the technique, could be said to be at his weakest moment. Although he had a considerable amount of supreme divine power to protect himself, he could not take care of Kang Xinmu. Chapter 56-63. The blood-colored mist that enveloped Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu caught Gu Tianzi's attention. The instant the battle formation's battlefield domain spread out, the entire battle formation was dyed blood red. The entire space was filled with a blood-colored mist. As the number of battlefields replicated by the battlefield domain increased, the blood-colored mist became even more intense. It could be said that it was normal to see the blood-colored mist at this time. However, the blood-colored mist that enveloped Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu seemed incompatible with the blood-colored mist of the battlefield domain. It was a faint layer of blood-colored mist. Although it seemed weak, it was able to resist the killing intent of the surrounding battlefield domain. Every time the battlefield's murderous aura surged over, it would be blocked by the faint layer of blood-colored mist. Grasshopper, that Kang Xinmu really is as you said. He can't be underestimated. Gu Tianzi turned his head and glanced at Grasshopper beside him. What greeted Gu Tianzi was a fist wrapped in the power of blue lightning. Gu Tianzi reacted quickly and narrowly dodged Grasshopper's attack. You old thing, why did you suddenly attack? After Gu Tianzi steadied himself, he pointed at Grasshopper and cursed, flustered and exasperated. You're in my way. Grasshopper glanced coldly at Gu Tianzi and strode away. Hey, you've lived too long that your eyes and brain aren't working well, right? Why don't you open your eyes and see if I'm in your way? Gu Tianzi turned around and chased after Grasshopper. You'd better not follow me. Otherwise, the moment you leave the secret realm will be the moment you step into your grave. Grasshopper's cold voice resounded. I'm not following you. I'm going to find Feng. Gu Tianzi smiled mockingly, dodged Grasshopper's attack, and dashed in the direction that Grasshopper had left. After taking a few steps, he seemed to have sensed something and stopped abruptly. A pair of cold eyes fell on Kang Xinmu. His fist that had been about to swing at Grasshopper changed direction. Jiang Shenwu abruptly sensed a chilling aura rushing towards him. Circulating his own strength, he sealed the supreme soul power surrounding Tang Xiaoyu's body. After doing all this, Kang Xinmu's eyes narrowed and glanced at the source of the cold aura. It was a middle-aged man with short silver hair. Kang Xinmu had no impression of this person's appearance, but he was no stranger to the aura flowing around him. Long before entering the perished realm, he had sensed this person's aura. At that time, there were too many cultivators, and the aura that leaked out from each cultivator was also very heterogeneous, so he could not identify them. He hadn't expected to sense it again at this time. Jiang Shenwu and Gu Tianzi were actually separated by over 1,000 stone pillars, and among them were several thousand soldiers, as well as cultivators who had been refined into puppet soldiers. Jiang Shenwu relied on the 7 devouring devil sealing art to clearly see Gu Tianzi. Gu Tianzi's cultivation was not ordinary. He could naturally see Kang Xinmu clearly too. It was just that his attention was not entirely on Kang Xinmu. Not far away from Gu Tianzi, there was a passerby-looking youth dressed in an ordinary long gown. Kang Xinmu had an impression of this person. Wasn't this that youth who was nagging after entering the ancient desolate city back then? If he remembered correctly, he seemed to have mentioned that the mystic realm was starting to move back then. Moreover, the mystic realm's next exit was highly likely to be in the outer realm. The myriad manifestations origin superimposition art that he displayed was much more exquisite compared to Tang Xiaoyu. This youth's performance was too ordinary compared to the surrounding cultivators who had already been refined into puppets, or those cultivators who had fallen into a predicament on the battlefield. Ordinary in this situation, it gave anyone a feeling that it was very abnormal. Kang Xinmu could not help taking another look at that youth. The feeling that that youth gave him was indeed very strange. There was clearly a living person standing there, but he could not sense any aura. No, that was not him. That was the shadow that he left behind. Suddenly, Kang Xinmu felt an obscure aura flashing past his body. Following that, the space behind him distorted slightly. He suddenly turned around and saw a youth standing there in that distorted space. It was precisely the appearance that he was sizing up just now, the youth who looked very ordinary. Immediately, that middle-aged man with short silver hair also swept over. Gu Tianzi saw the person he was looking for at a glance. It turned out that he was hiding in the range of Kang Xinmu's supreme divine power. No wonder he could not sense his aura just now. The youth detected Gu Tianzi's aura immediately. Seeing Gu Tianzi sweeping over towards him, he was not anxious at all. Instead, he approached Kang Xinmu unhurriedly. This action made Kang Xinmu very puzzled. Kang Xinmu could not remember when he had provoked such a mysterious person. At once, he raised his mind and prepared to fight. "You're called Kang Xinmu?" The youth's voice was indifferent and calm, not the slightest bit affected by Gu Tianzi, who was brimming with killing intent. The calmer and more indifferent the youth was, the heavier Kang Xinmu's heart became. He had the core inscription of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. He could see through the entire battle tactics, and could even see through the battlefield replicated by the battlefield domain. He actually could not see through the youth's aura meridians. He could only barely see that with each step the youth took, the space that he stepped into would distort. Apart from this, there was no other abnormality. "Yes." Kang Xinmu responded without a change in expression. The youth came in front of Kang Xinmu, sizing up the supreme soul force enveloping Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu, and said coolly, "A bit weak." His voice was very soft, and he said it very casually. Kang Xinmu was even more puzzled now. How his strength was did not seem to have any relation to him, right? The 7 devouring devil sealing art was really attractive. In order to obtain it, cultivators would always do some very confusing things. The secret territory is about to move to the outer domain. With your strength, I'm afraid you'll die as soon as you land. The youth restrained his expression, returning to the temperament that Kang Xinmu had when he first saw him. "So before you die, can you tell me the whereabouts of Emperor Shi's divine dragon?" The youth looked at Kang Xinmu and asked. Emperor Shi's divine dragon. This word caused Kang Xinmu's heart to freeze. What was his intention in looking for his master? "It's okay if you don't say it. There's still time. I'll wait for you outside the secret territory." Seeing that Kang Xinmu was silent, the youth did not intend to use forceful methods. Instead, he left very considerately. Just like him, he only took one step, and his entire person, along with his aura, disappeared completely. It had to be said that the youth's attainments in the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique had reached the peak. Of course, the youth's departure did not make Kang Xinmu relax. On the other hand, the air around him instantly froze. A powerful force pierced through the barrier formed by the supreme power of the soul and headed straight for him. Kang Xinmu condensed his supreme divine power, and only then was he able to counteract this incoming force.